across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock on this Tuesday morning, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is fantastic to have your company. As always, lots and lots to talk about. The news just keeps on coming. Mostly, it seems to be about Labour infighting, which we're told by the Tories is going to cost each family in this country £300 a year. Why? Well, because the cost of extra borrowing as the markets go, uh-oh, what is going on? But it's absolutely fascinating what is happening in that by-election debate and the ongoing issues over the future Labour leadership. We've got the cabinet meeting with the Prime Minister in number 10 today, of course, minus Wes Streeting, no longer in the cabinet. But who knows, in 4 weeks' time, the person leading that cabinet meeting could be, if there were a coronation, one Andy Burnham. Currently, the Greater Manchester Mayor wants to be, after the richest move for this by-election today, the local MP for Makerfield. But who knows if that's going to happen? Well, certainly we've got a new poll suggesting that, well, he would be the first choice for Labour Party members, certainly for the top job. We don't know what the people of Makerfield are going to think of it yet, but a poll of Labour members showing that Andy Burnham would decisively beat Keir Starmer in a head-to-head leadership contest, and goodness me, even more decisively would beat the likes of Wes Streeting. But King of the North, Andy Burnham, has now been branded King of the U-turns after he backtracked on wanting to rejoin the EU and agreeing to stick with Rachel Reeves's borrowing rules. Trouble with all of that is, well, you know, if you stick with those borrowing rules, then if you do want to do your big spend, well, how are you going to fund it? You're either going to have to cut spending on other things. Not sure many of Labour backbenchers are going to allow that. Or you have to put taxes up. So can he promise everything to everyone, as he's been doing? Very good way of being popular. Not just the little cute eyelashes and being man of the people and wearing a black T-shirt instead of a shirt and tie. But is that enough to actually suspend people's judgment when the actual facts hit the fan? Meanwhile, we are going to be talking about also MAFSA, Married at First Sight UK. It's an international phenomenon. 3 million people watch MAFSA UK. Many also watch all the other international shows. And after a BBC investigation into the show, which is shown on Channel 4 in the UK, there has been an outcry calling for, well, the show to be axed. Now, I've got a particular, basically, bone in this game on the basis that it's actually... No, don't judge me. It's my favourite television show. Well, strictly speaking, the one in Australia, which has just finished, is my favourite television show of all time. I will not be dissuaded by this. I will not be embarrassed about it. It is a matter of fact. It is the greatest TV show ever made. And now, because of some claims from some women who've been on the British version, there's talk of cancelling the whole show. Are we talking about the usual hysteria over claims that are unsubstantiated at the current time? We'll talk about that a little bit later with a media lawyer. Right now, I want to put a question to you, and I'm also going to be putting it to my guest, Tom Slater, editor of Spikes Online, who regularly joins us on a Tuesday. Andy Burnham has been accused of U-turning. Well, been accused of, I mean, he has. He's U-turned on both rejoining the EU, which was something he said only last year at Labour Party conference was something he would like to do. OK, to be fair, Tim, can we be fair on this show? He said in his lifetime he would like to rejoin the EU. He, like most of Labour front runners and front benchers, think that leaving the EU was a bad idea, catastrophic, some say quite wrongly, and that rejoining the EU should be something that they should push in their next manifesto. But also he has U-turned on sticking to the government's borrowing rules. Now, he said previously we shouldn't be in hock to the bond markets. Well, I hate to tell you, when you are paying £110 billion a year in interest on your government bonds, you are in hock to the bond markets, whether you like it or not. But if he says he wants to stick to current spending and borrowing rules set by Rachel Reeves, then he's going to have some difficulties when it comes to actually delivering any of the promises that he is going to make, which is, you know, spend, but not putting taxes up. How do you do that? You cannot square that circle. We'll talk about all of that, but I want to know your reaction to that. Andy Burnham, King of the North, now King of the U-turns. What is your reaction on those U-turns? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Love to hear your thoughts on that poll involving Keir Starmer as well. And also, I'd love to hear your calls on Married at First Sight UK. Genuinely, that's what I really want to talk about for the whole 3 hours. I'm not going to lie. Anyway, Tom Slater is here with us, editor of Spiked Online, as I say. Andy, Tom, what is your reaction to Andy Burnham's U-turns? And they are clearly U-turns, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, I've just made me a little bit nostalgic. It feels like we're back in 2015 when he was last running for the Labour leadership, where he became a running joke because of his flip-flopping.
Flip-flop Andy.
Exactly, when he lost to Jeremy Corbyn. Andy Burnham has pulled off a remarkable trick in recent years, which is to convince a large section of the commentariat as well as the sort of Labour membership that he's some sort of man of principle and of the left, whereas, you know, throughout his political career, he's kind of gone from the Blairites to the Brownites to the more sort of soft left place that he's in now, and he's been all over the place politically. I mean, he's very much like Keir Starmer in the sense that he's clearly very ambitious, he clearly wants to be Prime Minister, but the specific policies and approaches and postures he wants to take at any one time tend to change. So this U-turn doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I'm more surprised that people who should know better and who write and talk about British politics seem to have mistaken him for a man of principle for about 5 minutes. Which
and the thing is, he is a nice bloke. He's got a lovely manner. We doesn't come on the show anymore. Andy, come on the show. Used to come on the show a lot during lockdown. I think he played a blinder there. He's very personable. He talks human. He looks human. He likes his football. He likes a pint. And it's interesting, actually. We'll play a little clip of his sort of Makerfield by-election campaign. Bear in mind, he's not even officially the candidate yet. There's not even officially a by-election yet. But he's already put out a campaign video. It's about 4 minutes long. We won't play the whole thing. We want a campaigning, broadcast here. But again, a lot of it is people coming up and going, oh, Andy. And I actually don't think that's fake. I think people do come up to him all the time and go, all right, Andy, you're one of us. Thanks for sort of looking after us. And he's a very, very popular figure there, the Burnham effect. But let's play a little clip of what he had to say in that campaign broadcast.
I knew in my heart politics in this country had to change. And that's what I came back here to do. And that is exactly what we have done. You behaving yourself? Nice to meet you. You okay? Yeah. Working side by side with business, we've built the country's fastest growing economy.
You're doing a class job.
No worries,
Thank
man.
you.
No worries, man. Manchesterism is the end of neoliberalism, the end of trickle-down economics that has left out places like Makerfield. Make no mistake, that means a new path for Britain.
I mean, it's great stuff. I mean, it is very slick. It's a nice video to watch. It's not. I mean, most campaign videos by most parties are absolutely painful. I'd say he's up there with Zia Yusuf from the Reform Party in terms of his ability to do a really, really enjoyable, punchy video. And it is interesting, isn't it, Tom, when you look at the polling that's been done, a YouGov survey found that in a direct head-to-head leadership contest, so again, you'd have to be elected as an MP first, you have to be leader of the Parliamentary Labour Party to be Prime Minister. Poll of Labour members found that Andy Burnham would win 59% against Starmer on 37%. That is quite something. I don't know what the other people are doing with their votes. And in a direct head-to-head with Wes Streeting, this is embarrassing. Andy Burnham will get 80% and Wes Streeting 10%. Wes Streeting has not got a chance. This even up against Keir Starmer, people with the party would choose Keir Starmer over Wes Streeting, according to this polling. Do you think, though, there's an element where Andy Burnham's popularity is because he's not been held responsible since he's been Mayor of Manchester for all the woes of the government? I mean, if you've been in government, you're held responsible for all those U-turns in government and for things not getting better when you promised there'd be change and things would be better, for taxes going up, for that winter fuel allowance, U-turn and all of that. I mean, on all those issues, Andy Burnham's got completely clean hands. As soon as he goes into government, he doesn't. So the EU issue, that's a little fun one. But, in his defence, he said in his lifetime he'd like to get back in. But that's the view of most Labour politicians, Lib Dems, Greens, half the Tories as well. Who are we kidding? but on the borrowing rules, I think that's much more significant actually, in terms of the reality of why his support, I think, would collapse very quickly. There'll be a bounce. He'd be very popular for a few months, and then you're going to have to get into these awkward things like budgets. And we need all this extra money spent on defence, and that's just not optional. But you've got, the NHS costs just keep ballooning, the welfare costs keep ballooning. The Labour backbenchers have made it quite clear they will not accept even the tiniest cuts to welfare at all, or even cuts in the rise to welfare. You've got all of these booming costs, plus the cost of your borrowing going up, plus, energy prices, and we know we haven't even had the full hit from the Iran conflict. Even if it stopped tomorrow, we're still going to get that hit. When the proverbial hits the fan, he's going to be the one in charge.
No, and he's made no credible case as to how he would manage the various crises that we find ourselves in. And there's no one really in the Labour Party who have a coherent argument as to what being a Labour government looks like in a time in which you have these intense fiscal constraints, you have these enormous external events which are snarling up supply chains and sending energy prices
You can't be
soaring.
Blairite, you haven't got the government money.
Yeah, precisely. And what does Andy Burnham turn around and say? That, in Manchester they set up a new bus network. I mean, I'm sure it's a perfectly good bus network. I've used it a couple of times when I've been up there. But at the same time, there is no proper strategy. And those comments about the bond markets, whereas, of course, in an ideal world, one wouldn't be in Hopton. The fact is that we sort of are. And to sound off like that just makes you look quite unserious. So, as ever with Andy Burnham, I think so much of this is precisely as you say. His fingerprints aren't over the recent catastrophic Labour failures, but his fingerprints are kind of over the failures of the last government. He was in Westminster for 20 years during the Blair and Brown times, and I feel like there's a lot of, again, kind of misremembering of his record and the positions he might have previously taken.
But he said the last 40 years in this video, at the beginning, he's talking in a street in Makerfield saying, the last 40 years everything's been going wrong. Well, he was in government. I mean, he was health secretary, culture secretary. I mean, he had senior roles. He was a serious enough figure that he could run for Labour leadership twice and not get in. But that's the thing. And we've got this latest figures. We've got the claim from Mel Stride of the Tories that Labour case is going to cost every family £300. I don't think that's actually a stretch of the imagination in terms of when our borrowing costs go up because of chaos. And it was a reasonable criticism of the Tories. When you have chaos and uncertainty, that affects bond markets. And it's not a bunch of spivs in red, in their red, suspender belts. What are they called? They're called suspenders in America. Braces. They're called suspenders in America, aren't they? It's a different kind of thing. I promise you. It's not, spivs going, let's play with the markets. They're literally going, what are the odds that you're going to renege on your debt? I mean, that's the reality. And that will cost us extra money. Unemployment figures out today, 5% unemployment. Bearing in mind how many millions of people, and it is millions, are currently claiming some sort of disability, incapacity, sickness benefit, who would otherwise be on those rolls, by the way, but don't count as unemployed because they're not required to look for work. So I've got anxiety or ADHD. I think I feel suicidal today. Instant. You don't have to look for work. You don't count on the unemployment rolls. So God knows how high those unemployment rates actually are. You need a small level of unemployment because that is just people moving between jobs. But 5% is the highest it's been for a long time. Youth unemployment is at 16%, 11-year high. We're going back, to some the worst times post austerity. 16% youth unemployment, and again, huge number of young people are currently on disability benefits, claiming these spurious, mental health issues. So again, it's probably double that.
Yeah. No, and it's such a social catastrophe as well as an economic one. And for a Labour government...
It's a personal tragedy.
Absolutely. And for a Labour government to be presiding over high unemployment figures is bad enough. But the fact that, precisely as you say, for a very long time, and this happened under the Tories as well, we've essentially had people who are not in work being shuffled from column A to column B, that they're being put out to pasture, often on quite spurious grounds, and therefore they don't show up in those unemployment figures. And again, the Labour Party in general has no answer to this. I mean, this was one of the things that really did it for Keir Starmer, was that rebellion over, I don't even want to call them welfare cuts, it was just trimming the rate at which the pot of money would grow. They wouldn't even let him get away with that. So is Andy Burnham, who is essentially running as... to the left of Keir Starmer, whether that's just positioning or not, we can have an argument about. Do we expect him to tackle that issue? Of course not. That would be one of the first things that he'd capitulate to and insist that, if anything, we probably need more resources to keep people out of work. It's quite extraordinary. Because they've got a bit of anxiety.
Meanwhile, by the way, I mean, and this is very much related to this, we have a crackdown, because, and this does matter, we have a crackdown by police on dodgy barbers and vape stores and mini marts, and I'm probably car washes. A car wash I went to a couple of weeks ago. I mean, yeah, cash only. Oh, really? Really? Can I see your tax returns? I mean, let's see your annual return for your business. I mean, come on. But this crackdown by a new unit, £30 million fund for this new unit of police officers that is going to be basically led by Britain's FBI, the High Street Organised Crime Unit. I mean, it's been announced by the Home Secretary, targeting money laundering, illegal working and tax evasion. Again, illegal working is a massive issue. When illegal migrants and people who are here overstaying visas or on tourist visas or student visas, and they're working, they don't have the same rights, so minimum wage, so they get to work for lower wages. They push down wages for legal Brits, who have a right to those sort of pay rates. This is all over every high street. Yep. I mean, my local, I've got 3 high streets near me. One of them's great fancy well to do. One of them sort of middling, and one of them is, frankly, make sure the doors are locked when you drive through. I'm not going to lie. And that one is just non-stop. Mm-hmm. It's vape store, unlock your phone stores, dodgy barbers. Every single store. Most of the writing is in Arabic. I wouldn't even know what a lot of these stores actually sell, and this is in central London. And basically, there's a report out yesterday from the BBC that they've got, people there taking, a lot of these shops will be taking payments for small boat traffickers. It's just a way of you paying cash. And they're completely and utterly involved in the organised, crime, money laundering world. Is this a shock to anybody? This stuff's been seen by everybody. It's been written about in national newspapers for a few years now. And the police have suddenly thought, we should have a crackdown on this. Seriously, what have you been doing for the last 5 years? Yeah,
it's hiding in plain sight, doesn't really cover it where all of these dodgy businesses are concerned. You need to only walk down your own high street, as you described there, where you think, God, the sort of I
wouldn't walk down that street. I'm not going to lie. I'll drive down it with the doors locked.
The supply of Turkish barbers seems to vastly outstrip the demand for those particular services. Why do when you walk past many of these businesses, they're just completely empty, apart from a couple of people hanging about, maybe with the odd delivery bike
but turning over, a couple £100 a year.
No, exactly. It's just, if you're, and even in smack bang in the middle of central London, various
Oxford Street
souvenir shops at which you basically go up and sort of name your price, because it's quite clear that maybe this isn't the main business in which they're involved, and that there is something else going on with this money. It's become a bit of a running joke, and it's unfortunate that the police seemingly are looking for credit for tackling something that everyone else has noticed.
Looking for credit for doing your job, but also again, these are the people who they're involved in people trafficking. They're linked with sex trafficking. They're linked with child abuse, because they're sex trafficking children as well as young women and young men. It's so obvious, and I find it unbelievably frustrating that we're supposed to go, well done, and again, it's 30 million quid, and we're looking at a number of police officers, but it's in the dozens of police officers. It's not, guys, just literally street by street, just going. When this local high street, genuinely, when there is a police van going down, suddenly literally the street just disappears. No one's in the street. No one is in the street. Doors are closed. Not open. No one's in the street. And then an hour later, right, everyone's back out again. Come on. Come on. It's hiding in plain sight. It's unbelievable. And we've also had the shoplifting issue. That extraordinary video from that JD Sports in I think somewhere in London, where we can play the video where Ilford in East London, where we've got a young bunch of lads with their hoodies on. They're in the store in their hoodies, and then they're running up the escalators. The alarm goes off. All credit, a fantastic bunch of young female shop assistants who grab at them on the escalators, putting themselves at risk. They're grabbing the clothes off them at least. Now they're not, again, we see store guards in your supermarkets getting sacked for doing that. All credit. The girls are absolutely. Give every single one of those girls a bravery medal. But again, why is anyone even allowing a bunch of, you've got 5 or 6 lads with the hoods up inside the store? Take your hood off, get the hell out. But they shouldn't have to put up with it. And they know they can get away with it because people don't want to stop them. They'll either have a knife or something like that on them normally. And they know perfectly well they're not going to go to prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, we absolutely need, simple as this, we need to be building prison camps, and I mean very basic. When it rains, you're getting wet. And we need to be popping them up, and we need to have all these people are going to be shipped, through the courts, fast track, shipped in. Right, want to play? We need to get these people off our streets. I'm done with it. And I think most of the British people are done with it.
Yeah, and we're having to pay the price for all of this crime to miscreancy. The people who work in these shops are confronted on a daily basis with the hostility that comes from, and also the potential threat which comes from this being completely out of control. And when you see young men carrying on like that, it's clear that they've interpreted, and not without cause, that this behaviour is now tolerated. Yeah. That is something that is almost a bit of a laugh. You'll go viral for doing it. All of this stuff is really, really
There's no
toxic.
shame in it.
And it's that kind of broken windows theory thing, isn't it? You let the small things slide, and suddenly it builds up into a really unpleasant, crime-riddled picture that people in just this city, but many others
know the story, we know the plot, and again they'll suddenly go, now we're going to have a crackdown on this or that, and you think, what, you should never have got to the point that you needed to crack down. You should have been tackling it all along. If theft, if people having dodgy shops that aren't obeying the rules, which by the way are competing with the shops that are obeying the rules, that are paying tax and paying proper wages and doing everything right, and you are damaging the ordinary citizens. It's not a victimless crime. It damages and hurts financially and I think in our souls. I think when I tackled a couple of young lads who apparently go to the local comp round me, they walked straight through the barrier at the tube in front of me the other day, and I tackled them. I literally was going, "You're thieves, you're stealing. What's nothing to do with you? You don't work for TfL." And I'm like, no, but I have to buy a ticket every day. I buy a ticket every single day for every journey. I put my Oyster card in, and the costs for me as both a fare payer and a taxpayer funding it go up because people like you don't pay. And I'm like, they were just laughing in my face. I took a video of them. I mean, they told me which school they went to. They don't care, and they don't care because there are no repercussions. Yeah, and no repercussions.
And even when it's not getting a fine from TfL or having your collar felt for what it is that you've done, even just the fact that schools that seem to be intervening, that used to be cardinal sin, getting up to no good in your school uniform or whatever it might be. But it's just all across society. There's been this breakdown in standards.
I'm in the 80s now. I got called into the headmistress once because me and my mates in our school uniforms had been sitting around on a bench in the centre of town. I mean, seriously.
That was what up to no good.
That was what I've got. I mean, literally. I remember my bog standard comp. By the way, I was going to report these kids to their local comp, but given that the local comp had a 12-year-old that was stabbed by allegedly by two 14-year-olds on school premises, I figured they probably wouldn't be bothered about some of their pupils jumping the. I mean, I thought, is this worth my time to write this email?
For them, that's a relatively nice problem to have, isn't it?
Yeah, they're like, oh, they're the good kids. Oh, apparently, one of them is in lower sixth. He's up for an A in his economics A level, apparently. I explained to him why the economics of TfL didn't work if no one paid for their tube fare. This did not go down well. I don't know why I bothered, to be honest with you. But I mean, frankly, if the law would allow me to do, I would have done different things. Just saying. Let's also talk about MAFSA, Married at First Sight UK. Married at First Sight is a huge phenomenon. Started in Australia. Married at First Sight Australia. The original and the best. The latest series of that has just finished. I don't care. My husband laughs the hell out of me about this. It's my favourite TV series. I absolutely love it. And I love it because it's fun to watch. It's great outfits. There's lots of... But genuinely, I'm not joking, genuinely, I love people getting together. I love the romance. I love the fact that people can actually get together. There are couples in this series from around the world, America, Britain and Australia and New Zealand and everywhere else, where they've literally got married and had kids and are very happy. Most of them don't, let's be honest. However, it's great fun TV if you like that kind of thing. Even my husband gets sort of drawn into it and says, don't let me have an opinion on this. This is so awful. The BBC have done an investigation into It showed 3 million viewers on Channel 4 of the Married at First Sight UK, and they said that 2 women have told them they were raped during the filming of one of these shows, and a third has described an allegation of a non-consensual sex act. The argument is that the show did not do enough to protect them. All of the back episodes have been withdrawn from view. There's now a load of people clutching their pearls saying, we need to take this show off reality TV. There's not enough protection for these people. Now, some of these allegations, one of the allegations involves a man, they're having unprotected sex, and she says, don't ejaculate inside me. Sorry for the language at this time of the morning, but that's the reality. And he does. Now, that shouldn't have happened, absolutely. She had to get the morning after pill. I'm not entirely sure how a show's producers can control that. I don't understand. It seems to me, having watched the show, and I think the one man who is definitely identified as being alleged to have committed some wrongdoing, who has denied it. Everyone watching that show that year was going, well, he's absolutely a wrong 'un. He was called out for being a wrong 'un by the show's experts on air. How much protection should a show like that give to people? I mean, are people just getting hysterical? And that instant things, not everyone who went on a show to find love, found love, or had a good experience. Mm-hmm. When a lot of this stuff is stuff that happened behind closed doors, where the producers were completely unaware until after the show had finished and aired that there had been any problem. How much responsibility should people have for grown adults and how their personal relationships are carried out?
I think this is actually relatively straightforward. If there are serious criminal allegations, those of course should be investigated. If there's any suggestion that a production company or a broadcaster might have turned a blind eye or were part of the problem, they of course should be challenged about that and hauled over the coals. But this kind of reaction that we have at the moment, which is on the one hand to expect television shows and producers to have essentially sort of micromanaged to the nth degree, because these allegations are just allegations, and we should remember because those things always go by the slide. But at the same time, they cannot control for absolutely anything. Horrible things happen in all kinds of settings and businesses and what have you.
And no one's gone to the police, by the way.
Which is also an interesting dimension to this, and it's therefore this kind of after the fact knee-jerk, suddenly all the episodes are pulled off of the streaming service. It's just performative, but I think it will end up with, probably more likely than not, more of these shows just not going to air or shutting down because it becomes too controversial or difficult for them to operate. And at the same time, it's not clear to me that this has been a good learning experience in terms of how one deals with these kinds of allegations, criminally or otherwise.
I don't think you can deal with something you don't know about, or indeed with 2 adults who are choosing to share a bed, no one's forcing anyone, choosing to share a bed, and things happen. I think terrible things happen, unfortunately, in lots of relationships. Some of them, people continue in those relationships, and in fact, one of the relationships where the woman is complaining, they were kicked off the show because he was so dodgy. They thought it was such an unhealthy relationship, and she continued to see him for 6 weeks afterwards. What, are they responsible for that as well? I genuinely find this absolutely extraordinary. A TV show that lots of people enjoy is going to be basically pulled from the air because of hysteria, because apparently adults can't be responsible for the choices they make, and I'm really sorry if anything bad did happen. And again, these are allegations, but I'm not entirely sure why that's the responsibility of producers. I really are. And I know people will say, you're not sympathetic to women. I don't. By the way, a lot of the people who'll be saying this is outrageous, these are people who still don't believe what happened on October the 7th, so they can do one, frankly. But there we are. 10:30 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Want to hear from you? 0344 499 1000. Give us a call. Let us know your thoughts on all the big stories. Andy Burnham and his U-turns. I'd love to hear about, what you think about TV shows being pulled. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this crampdown, apparently, on dodgy barbers and vape stores. About time too, eh? That's up next. This is Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:33 is the time. Let's get some of your messages coming in about Andy Burnham and his U-turns. Donald says he's going to lose. Mike says he hasn't U-turned. He's gaslighting the British public. It'll change again if he gets into office. This is true. Charlie says Makerfield voted 60% leave, so he's desperate to hoodwink this constituency into voting for another Blairite. He'll forget the voters if he wins. And Fred says, I speak for everyone when I say I'm shocked that a politician would U-turn because it's politically expedient to do so. Just another Labour charlatan, said Sarah. Stuart is on the line in Wigan. Hello, Stuart. What do you want to say?
Hiya, Julia.
Hello.
I just wanted to say this, that I honestly cannot believe the arrogance of the people in this party. I really cannot believe the arrogance of them. I'm from Inley, so
Yeah.
I'm in the constituency.
Yeah.
They've just been handed the backside to them on a plate not 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the arrogance of it to just think that, right then, I'm just going to take this monarch and I'm going to sit for that and I'm going to win it and you're not going to win it, Burnham.
Why not?
There's no point, and I don't care how many times anybody says it, he's not the King of Manchester. He's not well liked round our way.
Why not?
Not a
Why
chance
not?
he's
He does seem he's got quite a likeable character, and he does appear to be pretty popular in Manchester. The polling says he is, unless everyone's lying.
Yeah, compared to who? Which polls? The polls are Labour voters.
Right. No, the
He might
polls
very well be with Labour voters, but I mean, you know my opinion on them.
So you think doesn't matter what any polls say, he's not going to win it?
Well, he's not done a U-turn, full stop, as far as I'm concerned. He's not done a U-turn. What he's done is what every other Labour Party member, Labour MP, just can't help doing every time they open their mouth, and that's lie.
Right. There we go. There we go.
They don't understand. We voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
They cannot turn around and say that Brexit has been bad because they, as a massive part of it, and Conservatives as well,
Totally agree.
as a massive part of it, haven't delivered Brexit yet. So keep your mouth shut on whether Brexit's been a success or not until we've got it.
Well, we have left the EU, but yeah, we haven't actually, been able. Well, again, lockdown didn't help, did it? Ukraine war and all of that, but being able to actually, capitalise on it. Stuart, great call. Thank you very much. We're going to take another quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Labour peer Lord Foulkes about what he makes of that election campaign. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:37 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest, Labour peer, former minister under Tony Blair. Lord Foulkes, a very good morning to you.
Hello, Julia. My friends think I must be a masochist to come on your programme so few.
We kind of think that too, but we always enjoy you coming on. What do you make of these polls suggesting that Andy Burnham would beat Keir Starmer in a straight fight to win the Labour leadership by a long way, 59% to what was it, 37%, and Andy Burnham would also be Wes Streeting, I mean, easily, hands down, 80% to 10%. Does this mean 100%? Like, if Andy Burnham wins the Makerfield by-election, he will be the next Labour leader?
I'm very sceptical of all polls, but particularly of this one, because it claims to be a poll of Labour members. Yet my understanding from my friends in the Labour Party administration is that they don't give details of party membership to pollsters. So I don't know how they managed to carry out this poll.
I think over the years they have managed to do these things and managed to ascertain who is and who is not a Labour Party member. But yeah, it's a fair point. But there's no doubt at all Andy Burnham is a popular figure even among Labour MPs in the House of Commons as well, and would certainly easily get that 81 MPs to back him if he does become an MP. The first thing he has to do is, well, we haven't even had the RIP move for the by-election yet. That's happening today, we understand. Yes. 18th of June. He's got to win it. Big challenge from Reform, which, of course, did very well in the local elections in that constituency. And also, of course, he's only got about a 5,000 majority. And as we know, people in seats aren't very keen when they voted for an MP a couple of years ago to be told, oh, for someone's personal ambition, you're going to have to vote again. Tends not to go down very well with voters. But do you think he's going to win that by-election?
I agree with you. There are lots of ifs about this. He hasn't been chosen as the candidate yet. Yeah. And that's not up to him, and it's not up to any sort of hierarchy. It's up to the Labour Party membership in that constituency. And I understand a long list and then a short list will be drawn up. Then the party members will meet. They'll choose the candidate, and it may be Andy Burnham. And then, as you say, if it is Andy Burnham, he then has to get elected. Now, I supported Andy Burnham in his first campaign. He's had two already to be leader. That was, he was defeated by, as you know, the current...
well, he was Ed Miliband. He was Ed Miliband and then Jeremy Corbyn.
And then by Jeremy Corbyn. So this would be his third attempt, third time lucky. So I think there are a lot of ifs. But, you know, I was wondering, Julia, when we were talking about these elections of Labour leadership, that I have a great respect for the other parties, and the Conservative Party had a good election and chose Kemi Badenoch. The Liberal Democrats had a good election and chose Ed Davey. How did Nigel Farage get elected, get chosen? Was he elected?
No, but that's up to each party. It's not. My view is it's none of my business. If I'm not a member of a party, it's none of my business.
It is your business, Why? Julia. No, it is your business.
Why?
Because we live in a democracy, and in a democracy, you would expect party leaders to be elected by their members, wouldn't you?
I think he would be if he was. I don't know. I don't think that's relevant. If people are unhappy about that, then they won't vote Reform, would they? That's
you see, they've just changed their chair. This guy. Lee Anderson has taken over from David Bull.
Yes.
I don't think there was any election for that.
I hate to tell you that this is, well, certainly the Tories, it's completely normal. That is a role that is that the party leader decides on.
Yes, but at least the party leader is elected. Kemi Badenoch was elected.
Yeah.
But Nigel Farage...
But Kemi Badenoch's election is a completely different election system from your election system, which is completely different, by the way, from the last election system, from the one before that. How a political party, if a political party want to choose their leader by playing, skimming stones on a pond and who gets the furthest, that's entirely up to them. None of my darn business.
It's up to them, but it's something that I think you should take account of. And I also noticed...
No, the voters the voters can take account of whatever they want to take account of, and they can choose. Let's not get silent. I want to talk about Andy Burnham, because you said he's run twice before for the Labour leadership. He's a very popular figure now, not so popular when he was in government. Of course, he said in his sort of 4-minute long campaign video, and it's superbly produced. It's a lovely watch. All credit to him. The man is a great communicator, but. You know, he's talking about how the last 40 years of failure. Well, he was in government for quite a good bunch of those 40 years, in cabinet. And now lots of accusations that he is returning to his old identity, which he was known as Flip-Flop Andy, where is he a Blairite? Is he on the left? What is he? What does he believe in? And we've seen 2 major U-turns in 24 hours on rejoining the EU, and also on whether or not he'd stick with Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules. And that would depend on, you know, how much you could borrow against taxation revenue.
Absolutely.
Now here's the thing. He wants to be on the left. He wants to promise, you know, this big regeneration, renationalising everything and all that. Well, that will cost money. There isn't any money. We're already borrowing a fortune. I mean, a fortune. Our interest is a fortune and going up. Realistically, he can't do any of the things that he's been vaguely talking about doing if he doesn't U-turn again back the other way. In which case, how long do you think he would stay a popular figure if he actually became Prime Minister?
Well, Julia, you've already just anticipated my point and proven it by everything you've just said, because we all know that if there was a vacancy, if he was elected leader, he would be subjected by you and all of in the media to the same kind of vicious personal attacks that Keir Starmer has.
Vicious personal attacks? I'm talking about policy that affects what taxes I pay and whether there's growth and whether, you know, my family members will have jobs in the future. What's that got to do with a vicious personal attack?
It's the way you describe it, Flip-Flop Andy and all this kind of thing.
That was his nickname.
Well,
that was his nickname. Hey, you're in the party that rejected him twice, not me. I'm not a party member.
Let's not say personal attack. Let's say political attacks. He'd be
that's different, isn't it? Criticising someone for U-turning on policy isn't a vicious personal attack, is it?
I'm just saying he would be under the same kind of attack.
Scrutiny.
There have been relentless attacks in the media against Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer...
He's had scrutiny.
He's been doing a good job. He's been implementing...
If he was doing a good job, why is your party trying to oust him as leader?
We're not. More and more people are... No, and more people are joining the party to keep him there. More and more people in the party are saying, do you ever look on X and see people posting? More and more people are posting.
Real life is absolutely on X, absolutely.
Stick with Keir. Well,
he's got senior members of his own cabinet who've said that they think he should go. We've had 100, almost 100 MPs saying they think he should go, including ministers. We've had a cabinet resignation. There is an absolute... I mean, look, even the latest poll, you say you don't trust the poll, but, says that people would prefer Andy Burnham to Keir Starmer. You've been living under a rock for the last 2 weeks.
No, I thought you were inviting me on, incidentally, to ask about how Hearts were done out of the Scottish League by Celtic, because that's where I was. And I spoke to lots of people about politics as well as football, and a lot of people supporting Keir Starmer.
Well, that's great.
I haven't been living under a rock.
Well, that's great. They should have a word with their local MP.
I've been getting out and about. You're interrupting me again, Julia. I've been getting out and about, listening to people. I had dinner with some Labour MPs last night. I've been listening to them. Mm-hmm. Of course, they've got some concerns about certain aspect of the government. But we were elected, and we've for 5 years on a manifesto which Keir Starmer is implementing. And in the latest King's speech, in terms of social housing, in terms of a whole range of other things, we are implementing what was promised.
Why is he so unpopular in the polls then?
Well, because you and the others in the media, most of which are controlled by multi-millionaires living abroad.
I'm absolutely controlled. Yeah, I'm absolutely controlled on. I mean, are you under the illusion anyone controls what I say?
No one could ever control you. You're uncontrollable.
I'm going to take that as a compliment by accident, George. But George, here's the thing. Wait a minute. You're saying that all those people who voted in the local elections and absolutely trounced Labour on May the 7th, were they all victims of this awful controlled media and these vicious personal attacks, and they can't think for themselves? Are they like the idiots who voted for Brexit that you guys in your party don't respect as well? Those idiot voters who don't know what they're doing.
The voters know exactly what they're doing.
So,
you can't change. You can't say that the voters are wrong. But the results were not as disastrous as you say. Midterm results. No, let me finish. Midterm results are always difficult for a government. They were I think when I was on previously, I pointed out to you about the 2004 local government elections and European elections, which we did very badly in. And then in 2005, Tony Blair won a third.
He did. But
election.
The difference between Tony Blair and Keir Starmer is Tony Blair is a good communicator. He was in control of his party. He had
we lost a lot of seats in 2004.
Yeah, but it's not. But you know that Keir Starmer isn't a political operation in the same way. I mean, this thing. At the end of the day, do you think that all these claims of U-turns, which are U-turns, do you think that they will actually dent Andy Burnham's popularity?
I don't know.
But I like that. I like that answer. We'll leave it there because time's against. Lord folks, I always appreciate you coming on. Labour peer, former minister under Tony Blair. Tom Slater listening to all of that, editor of Spiked Online. He backtracked a bit on like, oh no, I'm not criticising the voters. But we're always told Keir Starmer's unpopular because of nasty people in the press and the media who are criticising him. I mean, do they not hear the chants at football stadiums? Keir Starmer is a banker. I think that's what they're saying.
Something like that.
I mean, they need a whole arenas start chanting this because they've read the Daily Mail, I assume.
Well, this is always the Labour argument, is that we're doing badly in the polls because of the tabloids, we're losing elections because of the tabloids. I mean, this is just excuse-making, and it's also just blaming the public by proxy. They're fooled, they've been whipped up into a frenzy. This is what they always do. Just listen to what people are saying on football terraces and elsewhere. Keir Starmer is treated with a mix of hatred and derision in the country to an extent that I'm actually quite surprised by. I thought people would be bored by him. I thought people might not have particularly good things to say about him.
That people feel
incredible
for him is
and in such a short period of time. And that's not because of personal attacks from the media. That's because of what a terrible go of it he's made in office.
And also, again, if you call a load of people far-right bigots, people weirdly don't take kindly to it. I know they're old-fashioned like that, but there we are. 10:49 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Love to hear your thoughts on all that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Up next, going to talk to David Buick about whether all this chaos is going to cost us £300 each as a family because of his extra costs in borrowing, but also are we hitting peak tax according to the IMF, and unemployment hitting 5%. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:52 is the time. Let's talk about, well, economics and basically the pound in your pocket. It's simple as that with David Buick. He's a financial advisor and markets commentator at Aquis Exchange. A very good morning to you, David.
Empress, top of the morning to you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Quite a lot of news to talk about. The Tories, Mel Stride in particular, has claimed that the Labour chaos could cost every family in this country £300. Is that true?
It's possible, but it would need gilt yields to go above what are already eye-watering levels to even higher. And I think the first thing that everybody needs to remember about the gilt market is whatever anybody says, it is never wrong, because it always reflects opinion, an opinion that matters. And this government has borrowed money right up to the hilt. And if I just, without being boring, but just to say, in the course of the last 2 years, the 10-year gilt yield's gone up from 3.85% to 5.07%.
Can I clarify? When you say gilt yields, this is the cost, the interest rate that we pay on government borrowing. So
correct,
let's face it, most of us aren't, living in that sort of world.
Yeah.
I'm certainly, wish I was. So that's when the government says we would like to borrow some money, 10, 20, 30 years or whatever, pay back, and we will pay interest on borrowing that money. Our rate of interest that we pay has gone sky high and way above any of our European and other competitors.
By a long way. And you see, we've already borrowed £2.9 trillion. And that is up since the days of Ken Clarke, when it was 565 billion. So it just gives you a level of where we're at. In the United States, it's even worse.
Yeah.
They borrowed $38 trillion. And their 10-year Treasury yield's gone up from 3.66 to 4.61, which is...
It's eye-watering. Well, we know. I mean, something like this. The government borrows £130 billion at the moment this year, I think, to fund spending. But 110 of that 130 billion goes straight out on paying interest. Not even paying off our debt. No. Paying the interest on our debt.
Just straight interest. Yeah, that's right.
So we're borrowing a load more money to pay the interest on that. I mean, I said the other day, we are in absolutely, loan shark territory here. When we're going to have men coming round going, if you don't pay, we're going to start, taking, we're going to claim the Tower of London and go and sell that to pay the money. I mean, we are in very dodgy territory on that front. What do you make of Andy Burnham basically saying originally, we shouldn't be in hock the bond markets, and now he's saying, well, yes, he would stick with Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules. What difference does that make, that U-turn?
Well, I think he realises that the market is always right, and that if he makes bold statements like that, which he knows in his heart of hearts are nonsense, that the market will react badly and it'll cost everybody money. And as Mel Stride said, it could be as much as £300 per family in a couple of years' time, which is absolutely catastrophic. I think the thing is what this government doesn't get, and it's going to be even worse under Andy Burnham, because it looks like Labour will turn slightly to the left, is until you deal with the welfare bill and the public sector, you are not going to write this out. The IMF's, okay, whoopee. They've said that our GDP is going to go up from 0.8% to 1% in 2026.
Get out the champagne, David.
But remember, they've also said in the same breath, boys and girls, you're up to your borrowing limit and you're up to your tax limits before you trash the economy.
And that's the thing, taxing people more, whether it's income tax, whether it's VAT, whether it's business taxes, it basically stampens down the economy. We're not going to get any of that growth that we've been promised. But I mean, when we saw evidence of that, didn't we? The unemployment rate has hit 5% today, and that is a hidden. I mean, that hides a hell of a lot of other people who are the young. I mean, it's 16% youth unemployment.
That's right, and 100,000 people on the dole that weren't there 3 months ago.
Yeah, but also crucially, all the people who are claiming these spurious disability benefits for mental health issues, who don't count on the unemployment rolls because they're not required to look for work. The rate's probably double that in reality.
Well, I think the figure that really terrifies me is 9.2 million people are economically inactive.
Yeah.
That's a huge number of people. I mean, all right, grannies and grandpas and God knows what else. But as a percentage of the total population of the country, it is unsustainable.
No, I think that's 9.2 of working age. I think that's working age. People, fine, if you're a student, then you're going to work, or you're between jobs. But we simply, it's unsustainable. I mean, is anyone who is looking at being the next Prime Minister of any party? Is anyone looking like a that they get it? Because I mean, I was only half joking. I wrote a column in the Sun on Friday, basically saying we should just go to hell in a handcart and just go straight with Angela Rayner and somebody who absolutely doesn't get it, spend a load of money, borrowing goes sky high, the economy collapses. Let's get it over and done with, because at some point we're going to have the reality check.
But the trouble is, if it was just us in isolation, jokes aside, you probably have a case. But when you realise that the rest of the world is not in a particularly good state, I mean, even a country like Japan is drowning in debt, and they're very keen on this. The one thing I will hand to the European Union, there's not much I'll handle to them because their economy has been a shambles in the last 5 years. They have kept their borrowing costs down. And I give
France hasn't.
I'll repeat myself. I didn't mention France. I mentioned the European Union as a whole bunch.
Right.
And that is actually down to Christine Lagarde. And I think she's actually done a very good job. But you're 100% right about France. But I don't think I really want to individualize too many people. I think areas are terribly important. And the one thing that people don't get, and I can't understand it, that if you stimulate business, you stimulate growth. People pay more tax, countries pay more tax, you get more jobs, and everybody lives happily ever after. They just don't get it.
I know. It is still bizarre. I don't know how many times people have to try the whole, tax more, we'll take money from the rich because those awful people taking from the poor and thinking that will make the poor people any better off. There's no evidence whatsoever long term that it does that. David Buick, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. Tom Slater, listening to us there and listening to that conversation. It is quite frustrating, isn't it? But the huge amounts of money we're spending on borrowing, the huge taxation. People are going, I'm paying a load of tax, nothing seems to work, public services aren't getting any better. What's going on?
No, and the fact that the amount of money that we're spending purely on servicing the debt is a perfect example of what people suspect is going on, which is that they're paying a hell of a lot of money and it just literally disappears. I mean, this is not money which is going to provide hospitals or Bobby's on the beat. This is money that is purely trying to keep us ticking over in relation to our debtors, and we're so exposed now that it wouldn't take much for us to get in very deep economic waters. This is something that is kind of always hinted at in our political debate, but I think the full seriousness of what could happen,
I don't think most of our politicians get it. And I include all the parties on that. I don't think they get it. And bearing in mind the Tories saying they sort this out, Tories helped get us into this mess over the last few years. Again, it would have been worse under Labour because Labour wanted more lockdowns and more money spent. So, there we are. So much more to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts, particularly on flip-flop, Andy and his U-turns on the EU and borrowing. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. And I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for joining me, whether you're on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker watching on YouTube or your connected device. I really appreciate you being here. If you've missed anything from the show already, don't forget to go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss anything. Coming up in this, I'm going to be talking more about Andy Burnham. Flip-flop Andy, more U-turns on the EU and government borrowing, but also a poll suggesting of Labour members that hands down be not just Keir Starmer but embarrassingly well would beat Wes Streeting as well. Also going to be talking about what the hell is going on in the Iran conflict. Donald Trump has backed down from a full-scale attack on Iran after, he says, a plea from allies in the Gulf in a bid for one last shot at a nuclear deal. Plus a crackdown by the police on dodgy barbers, vape stores and mini-marts in a £30 million crackdown led by Britain's FBI. I mean, why did no one think of this before, rather than letting that level of criminality blatantly, openly on all of our high streets explode like that for years? Quite extraordinary, but there we are. Delighted to say joining me for the show today is editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Morning to you.
Morning.
Put the question to you that I've been putting to the audience today. Obviously what I really want to talk about is Married at First Sight UK. That's what I want to talk about for the whole of the next 2 hours, but they won't let me. I mean, I could if I wanted to, but I have a funny feeling you might all switch off. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that BBC investigation and the women who have claimed that two that were raped, one a sex act that she was not comfortable with, and criticism of the producers and of Channel 4. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But in particular, I want to talk about Andy Burnham, accused of U-turning, because he has, on rejoining the EU, but also he says he'll stick to the government's borrowing rules. It's all part of his bid to win the Makerfield by-election, become Prime Minister, bearing in mind that by-election hasn't even been called yet. It will be on the 18th of June, and he hasn't even become the Labour candidate yet. Oh, yeah. And he hasn't won it yet to have a chance to become Prime Minister. But what's your reaction to that? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is a number to get in touch. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. You can get in touch with me on X as well at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1, standard network rate message. So that question to you, Tom Slater, what's your reaction to these U-turns? I mean, is it legitimate to call them U-turns?
Oh, of course it is, especially when it's coming from Andy Burnham, who's made a political career out of U-turning, flip-flopping. This is what he does. There was a good joke doing the rounds on Twitter the other day that a Blairite, a Brownite and a Corbynite walk into a bar and Biden says, "Hello, Andy, what are you having?" Yeah. This is what he does. I mean, when he ran and lost against Jeremy Corbyn, he was all over the place, desperately trying to kind of keep up with the supposed radicalism of Corbyn, and really made a complete fool of himself in the process. He was a running joke. I mean, it's to his credit in a sense that he has managed to kind of rebuild his profile, go and run a successful mayoralty, reinvent yourself, absolutely. But it's when he actually comes under proper scrutiny, where he's not just the sort of king over the water, someone who Labourites or the commentariat can project all of their hopes and dreams onto, that he comes unstuck. He's clearly the front runner. If there is a leadership election in which he stands, he will almost certainly
Lord Foulkes, a Labour peer, was saying to us, Keir Starmer's not unpopular. It's like, OK. I mean, let's play along with that.
Keir Starmer's probably unpopular in his own household. I
understand for quite some time over his issues on tackling anti-Semitism, he absolutely was among his own family, of his wife's family, of course, being Jewish. But here's the thing. I mean, you say you're quite right in terms of he has reinvented himself, and he's got this whole, I'm not a politician, I'm different, I'm not part of the Westminster mob.
I wear jeans.
I wear jeans. I wear a black T-shirt instead of a shirt.
I like elbow. I mean, this is the extent of the.
And he's quite cool. And he's got lovely eyelashes. You've got to give him credit. Mind you, so does Yousaf. I mean, I'm not sure eyelashes keep you in a job. Just saying. But
credit where it's due.
But credit where it's due. He's got a good pair of eyelashes. And he's a normal bloke, and he does talk human. He is a much better communicator than the Prime Minister. In every video that he does, every interview he does, every speech he does, the whole thing is just. When is this going to end? And you were talking a little bit earlier about the level of vitriol that is directed towards Keir Starmer. I mean, the Lord Foulkes, Labour bill, was basically saying it was all drummed up by the media. On the contrary, I think the media world is quite shocked by how much the public hate Keir Starmer. The left hates him, the right hates him, middle ground who go, hold on a minute, you're calling us far right because we like the Union Jack. You know, I mean, and we don't think girls should be mass raped and nothing happens as a result. We're not far right. People don't like that, but there's no doubt at all Andy Burnham is much better at the PR, and he is popular in Manchester. We know that, but is that enough? And at the end of the day, the scrutiny you get when you're the Mayor of Manchester is very different from the scrutiny you get when you're the Prime Minister and you have to deal with everything. But let's play a little clip of that 4-minute campaign video, don't we? This is much shorter than that, but it's a 4-minute campaign video that Andy Burnham put out. It starts with him walking local streets at the school that he'd been thrashed at football, and his kids had gone to the school, and he's been talking about the last 40 years of failure. Here's a little taste of that campaign.
I knew in my heart politics in this country had to change, and that's what I came back here to do. Cheers. And that is exactly what we have done. You behaving yourself? Nice to meet you. You okay? Yeah.
Working side by side with business, we built the country's fastest growing economy.
You're doing a fast job. No worries, man. No worries, man.
Manchesterism is the end of neoliberalism, the end of trickle-down economics that has left out places like Makerfield. Make no mistake, that means a new path for Britain.
No, it's basically, it's a promo video, it's a PR video, but it looks good. He speaks normal, he speaks human. The reality is, when it comes to what he would do differently, that's the question. Yeah. He's very much pitching himself. He's no longer the Blairite. He's he's pitching himself as the soft left. Like, he's not Corbynista. He's not a complete lunatic, but he wants to turn the country to the left, and that is absolutely where Labour voters are, or Labour Party members are, and it's absolutely where Labour MP backbenchers are. But the reality of it, it's very different, isn't it? He's already had to backtrack on in U-turn on this EU thing. Wes Streeting just threw it out there at the weekend, basically like, I want to rejoin the EU. Now, Labour manifesto in 2024, very clear, we would not rejoin the customs union or the single market. The reality is they are desperately trying to go back on both, and we know they're going to try us by hook and by crook. I'd rather they were honest about it, and so that's what we want to do. Fine, run it on a manifesto, we'll have a referendum, let's see how that plays out, because we ain't rejoining. I can 100% assure you, when you see the terms that the EU offers, including, by the way, taking the euro, not the pound, it's just a chance in hell. It won't be 52-48. It will be sort of 72. I mean, seriously. But I mean, I'm happy to play if you want to have a democratic vote. Doing it dodgily like this, what Keir Starmer is doing, I think is worse. But the key thing that would really affect us would be the borrowing. He says he's going to stick to the fiscal rules. This after saying he doesn't think the country should be in hock to the bond markets, but also talking about, massive investment, building loads of council houses. With what money? With what money? If you're not borrowing more, you're going to have to tax more. Yeah,
and this is why I think he would become sort of continuity Starmer in a lot of ways. I think he would want to do some kind of symbolic sops to the soft left of the Labour Party when he came in. But generally speaking, this U-turn on fiscal rules indicates that he was chastened by that experience after the Labour Party conference last year when he made these comments, made a bit of a fool out of himself. And this is the thing, I mean, he may well... It's our working assumption that if he stands in this leadership race, if he does get into Westminster, there's a lot of ifs here, that he would easily win it. But I think the shine would come off him very quickly, particularly at a time when in office there's all kinds of huge issues that need to be dealt with, and it's quite obvious he doesn't have the answers. But also, we're at a time where there's a particular premium put on authenticity, a sense that people really stand by what they're saying. Like them or loathe them, both Nigel Farage and Zach Polanski strike people as authentically themselves and in their politics. In Polanski's case, he's authentically an idiot, but nevertheless that's still something that people can kind of hang their hat on. And I think Andy Burnham, you can imagine there's a certain type of voter, a certain type of slightly more well-to-do Labour voter that would make them of a certain age. It would make them feel a bit better about this government. It would make them feel a bit happier putting that cross in the box next time. But when it comes to either winning back younger people from the Greens, it's not obvious that he would be able to do that. And when it comes to holding on to those working class Leave voters, which Labour just about managed to claw back just to a degree at the last election by trying to kind of neutralise the issue.
They've already gone anyway.
No, exactly. They're not coming back either. So I think he could well be the best candidate for Labour in terms of stemming the losses, shoring things up, putting them in better place to not lose by as much.
But part of the argument in the party has been, well, Keir Starmer tried to appeal to reform voters on being tough on immigration and things, and that hasn't worked, and that's why the Green Party's grown. Well, he might have talked a few things, said a few things like the Island of Strangers speech, didn't do anything about it. He then called everyone far right bandwagon jumpers on grooming gangs inquiry and things like that. They abjectly failed on illegal immigration. Yes, we've seen legal migration come down, but it's still in the hundreds of thousands. And by the way, that came down because of Rishi Sunak's policies, not because of anything that his party has done. So I mean, I'm tackling crime. I mean, give me a break. Does anyone feel that crime is being tackled right now? So he's not actually doing anything to appeal to that side of things. And and my God, he hasn't tackled the culture wars. Even with the the easy out with the Supreme Court ruling. No, double down on a load of that madness on trans as well. And by the way, I mean, Andy Burnham got very big issues with him on that as well. He's another classic. He was in favour of gender self-ID and things like that. These things to me make people unelectable to sane people. It's as simple as that. But he is a better communicator. Do you think someone who is just a better communicator, who is likeable and not just, I mean, literally Keir Starmer starts speaking and the country just goes shut up? Do you just think that that actually, just being able to communicate better means that he can get his message across? Oh yeah, I mean, on the kind of political communication score, anything would be an upgrade on who we've currently got. I mean, deaf mute or something. I mean, it's like that sort of thing where really I don't understand how Keir Starmer manages to communicate to his own friends and family, let alone to the country at large. You just imagine standing next to him at the football. Oh my God!
Exactly.
There'd be like the most amazing
the
victory. There'd be like a last minute, I mean, Arsenal, victory last night. Fingers crossed. We're Arsenal family, But at the end of the day, he could make that boring. He could. I mean, he is a charisma vacuum. He sucks the oxygen out of the room, and not in a good way. So therefore, of course, Andy Burnham, any of these people would appear like an improvement, but. It's obviously on any other score, it would feel like more of the same, if not worse. It's going to be fascinating because it's the country being run by Labour members and Labour backbenchers who are so out of whack with the issues that the country is facing and the views of the majority of the population, and don't understand that it's Labour policies that mean that unemployment has hit 5%, youth unemployment at 16%, and that masks these massive big numbers who are on basically some sort of disability benefit with anxiety. Let's talk about the crime issue. Dodgy barbers, dodgy vape stores, those mini marts that we've seen in a BBC investigation this week. Basically, you can, people smugglers saying, well, your family or your friends, they can pay them money for your transport across the channel by paying in cash at this local mini mart, and if you don't make it, we'll pay it back. I mean, they're all part of this. I mean, the trust levels involved in this crime industry is extraordinary. But also, of course, they're just, they're money laundering business. They are people trafficking, sex trafficking, child sex trafficking business. They are drug businesses. They're handling weapons. These are really dodgy businesses. They're on every local high street. I was saying in the last hour, one of my local high streets, we kind of sit between two, there's another one nearby, is basically entirely dodgy looking shops. Where God knows what is going on, and everyone disappears if a police van appears, but then suddenly all come out again. I mean, the police have suddenly noticed, we should do something about this. This is part of an announcement from Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, with the new High Street Organised Crime Unit targeting money laundering, illegal working, and tax evasion. But again, they've been doing it in plain sight. Why does this government and the last government they need to wait for something to become an absolute disgrace on a grand scale, whether it's shoplifting, whether it's this sort of stuff, before they do anything at all, and they go, can you give us credit please, because now we're attacking this thing? Well, it wouldn't have been a thing if you had done even 1% of your job at any point in the last 10 years. No, it does feel like the government or the authorities have to be shamed into doing things that they should be doing already. You saw that in relation to the fare jumping, told about crimes that everyone can see with their own eyes every day. Exactly, and they can't claim to have been unaware of it, but it's they let it get to such a terrible degree that there's so much public outcry that they then start to, in a sort of ostentatious fashion, and while constantly communicating that they're doing it as if they should be patted on the back for doing their job. But it's not going to touch the sides. I mean, this is something which has been turned a blind eye to for a very long time. These kind of pockmarked high streets, which are up and down the country, are almost only going because of only still have shops
that aren't vacant because of the dodgy pubs and the dodgy vape shops. It's an absolute scandal. But it's not something that the police or anyone else could claim to have been surprised by.
No, I mean, I don't understand. They walk past it. I mean, if I get the rare occasion I see a police officer anywhere in the street, again, they walk past, people begging in the street. Still a crime, by the way, still a crime in this country. And they're almost entirely foreigners, certainly in London, almost entirely foreigners. They're not, veterans who are down on the luck and who should absolutely be getting all the care and the help they need. We're talking about, most around my way, they're Romanian and Albanian, and frankly, literally send a van round, pick them up, literally put them on the first ferry back. I keep saying this, but I'm so done with this. I'm just so done with what is going on in our high streets and the impact that this has on things like local employment. I mean, all these dodgy places, when everything's dodgy, there's no, your teenager who's looking for some experience working in a shop like we would have done, they can't get a job in these places because they're too dodgy and they're not hiring. They're not paying legal minimum wage. They don't do things on the books, and they put the legitimate shops out of business. And that's what they do. It's like pubs, people getting their booze, stolen. Again, the shoplifters steal to order. They're not mums who can't afford baby milk, Yeah. They're stealing to order, and then they're selling it around the back of these shops. I mean, it's circular. It's all going on, and it's happening in plain sight. And the police are going, oh, we've just noticed this because it's been in a couple of double-page spreads in newspapers, or the BBC's done an investigation, and now we're going to tackle it. What were you doing? You're not investigating sexual assaults. You're not investigating shoplifting. You're not investigating people trafficking. You're not investigating burglaries. I mean, when was the last time a police officer turned up when you had a burglary or your car stolen? What are you doing?
And it all adds up to a really depressing picture, because whether it's clear-cut crimes or quite antisocial behaviour, or just the sort of general air of unpleasantness that now attends a lot of our cities, we've let things get so bad that it's going to take actually a pretty almighty effort to write us, because we talk about the issue or the particular crime changes, but the story stays the same every single day, because things are just sort of unravelling out there and no one seems to care. And I
think people are going to more and more take things into their own hands, and they're just going to say we've had enough. And people are going to call it vigilantism. No, I think it's just going to be people being good citizens. I think people have just done with this now. They've had enough, and people have taken the mick out of them, and the authorities have taken the mick out. Absolutely. If you are an ordinary, hard-working taxpayer now who pays for stuff, you pay for your bus fare, you pay for your fuel legally at the garage, you pay your taxes, you pay for your goods when you go to a store, you pay full price. You're a mug. You're going to start feeling like a mug because no one else is doing it. And when trust breaks down, and by the way, small point worth making, if I look at a dodgy barber around my way, if I look at a dodgy vape store, or those little mini marts, I look at any of those, the car washes, there isn't a single person there who speaks English with an English accent. Not one. So don't tell me it's nothing to do with colour of anyone's skin, although it is very noticeable there is virtually no one white, certainly in my local area, which is largely white, who I say, I don't care about the colour of people's skin, but if they are speaking clearly, obviously, foreign accents, I do not understand why anyone is allowed to be in this country who is so openly, blatantly committing these crimes. I'm sorry, I just find it extraordinary. Again, ship them out, I'm done. And I think most people feel the same way, I really do. By the way, related to that, extraordinary case of a Malaysian migrant, Erin Ong, who's going to get compensation. She didn't have a work permit. She was only on a visitor's visa, but she got a job managing a hotel in Britain. How she did that, because I don't know why they're hiring someone without proof that they can work here. But she's from Malaysia, she's a migrant. No legal right to work in the UK. She, extraordinarily, took her case. She claimed that she faced discrimination. She was made to work in conditions that aggravated her asthma, I kid you not, and was required to show her passport. She was sacked for refusing to move accommodation. She went to an employment tribunal despite having no legal right to work in this country. She's going to get compensation. What is going on? What is going on? She should have gone to the authorities, and on day one, they should have shipped her out. Yep. Off you go. Planes to Malaysia, bye. And don't come back.
This is like something you and I made up to have something to talk about. I mean, it's so cartoonish, isn't it? But these stories are 10 a penny these days.
Non-stop.
And people have had enough of it. And I think people do feel like this is another example where they are being taken for bugs. People assume that if you do the right things, that the government will look after you. Yeah. Meanwhile, they see the government, the authorities, the legal system looking after people who not only do all the wrong things, but have no right to be here in the first place.
Absolutely. It's amazing. Just finally, I want to talk about the Married at First Sight UK. We've got 3 brides who've been on a recent series. It's a huge series. 3 million people watch it in this country. It's a spin-off of the biggest one, which is Married at First Sight Australia, which is the best, the first and the best. But these 2 women claim they were raped during the filming of their series, and a third says she's described an allegation of non-consensual sex act. They say the show didn't do enough to protect them. Channel were aware of some of the allegations, but certainly not all before broadcast. Certainly they were not told that the women had been raped before broadcast. These women, again, have alleged rape. In one case, their partner has been named and they have been named. They've chosen that in terms of the sexual allegation. But again, no one's gone to the police. A lot of this happened, obviously clearly happened, behind closed doors. The producers were not aware at the time that there were any particular issues. One couple, actually, I remember watching the series, the guy was absolutely wrong, and I don't know whether he committed any crime, but he was absolutely wrong in terms of his controlling behaviour. But she, by the way, stayed with him for 6 weeks afterwards. This was her thing. She likes controlling men. It's what she thinks is love. She's a damaged soul. But I think anyone watching the series would have seen there was a problem there. And they kicked him off the series because of that. My thing isn't this, and just got to keep this brief because we've got to go to a break, but I just think it's extraordinary that we're going to look at a TV series. They've taken all these, the back shows down. There'll probably be a question mark about whether this series goes forward and is taken off air entirely. It's a series that millions of people love. It's one of my, genuinely, it's my favourite programme. I absolutely love it. I know it's trash, but I don't care. I love it. But because of allegations, they've not gone to the police. There's no proof of a crime here. I'm not saying I don't believe them, but I'm sorry. I also think the men are, accused of something that happened in behind closed doors. We don't know what did happen. But crucially, how much control can producers have about what happens behind someone's locked bedroom door when someone has every right at any time to leave that bedroom and, probably are safer on this show than they are in their own home, where they don't have a producer in the room next door to say, "Help! Can you come and help me?" Well, how much of a duty of care should TV producers have to people?
Well, I think this is a big question now because there are so many, particularly these reality shows, which have been hit by crises or tragedies or allegations of one form or another, and what we end up getting is sort of knee-jerk, take all the episodes down, even before any allegations have actually been delivered to the police. I believe in this case that hasn't even...
No one's approached the police.
It's not an active criminal investigation.
And lots of women who were raped do not approach the police. I mean, they wouldn't have a chance of getting these cases convicted if they did. But I mean, because that's why you get a low conviction rate on rape. Because how can you tell? How can you have anything beyond a reasonable doubt? And
so you're then in a situation where you've got producers, production companies, broadcasters being hauled over the coals, having their shows cancelled for something which oftentimes, and we don't know all the details here, that they couldn't conceivably have been aware of, able to intervene in. I think beyond the point of a generalised duty of care in a sense of if something serious happens that people are encouraged to go to the police or so on and so forth. What more can you expect people to do? Yeah, that's my thing. I genuinely, I'm really had it with this. I really do this. And again, it's what happened with Jeremy Kyle. And again, this man committed suicide, nothing to do with going on the show. We had people committing suicide. Love Island. And again, I'm afraid there's an awful lot of very unhappy people who want to be famous for the wrong reasons, and I'm very, very unfortunate. I don't think the TV shows are causing these problems. I really, really don't. I'm fed up with everyone infantilising human beings, adults who make choices. 11:26 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Andy Burnham's accused of U-turning on rejoining the EU and sticking to the government's borrowing rules in a bid to win that Makerfield by-election to become PM. Frankly, is he going to be just the same as Keir Starmer, but in a black T-shirt, not a white shirt? Is that all it is? Give us a call. Love to hear your thoughts. This is Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:28 is the time. Let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Mark is in London. Hello, Mark. What do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. Hi, Tom. I just wanted to say I just actually disagree with what Tom said earlier about Andy Burnham. If he becomes PM, stemming some of the losses for Labour against reform, I think if he becomes PM, he is more likely to result in a reform government.
Why'd you say that?
Well, the reason it's because he's making such ridiculous and impossible to keep promises.
Yeah.
You know, if you just look at some of them, like it's not just the money. You know, if you look at things like renationalising energy and water, it's not just the billions and billions that would cost. I mean, a big part of our energy, both the supply and the production, is owned by EDF. EDF is a French company, 100% owned by the French government.
Yeah, which is utterly mad.
I can't imagine Macron's going to be, no problem. Not only can you take over all of the stuff that we've bought, but we'll give it to you for cheap.
We'll give you exactly. But also the reality is everyone. I mean, again, I think there's a perfectly good argument. If you get, I'm not choosing where I get my electricity from. It's the same sodding electricity. It's just some weird anything. I've not got a problem with certain monopoly public goods being nationally run. The trouble is, it's not going to make a blind bit of difference to our costs. Our bills aren't going to go down if he did that.
No, exactly. And the other things he's talked about, I mean, building 1.4 million council houses.
Brilliant,
I mean, the cost of that. I mean, we can't even build anywhere near what the government's, 1.5 million over 5 years.
I mean, they're already way behind on that with no prospect of hitting those targets. No government ever does. Yeah.
So I think he's going to try I don't think he's even going to try these things. So he knows they can't be done. And that is just going to even more erode faith in the mainstream parties. And I think that's just going to lead to, the sort of, the non-mainstream parties winning. And I think
that's a very, very good point. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate that. Michael is in Birmingham. Hi, Michael. What do you want to say?
Yeah, hiya. I think it's possible to overanalyse and underanalyse the Ashton and Makerfield by-election. Let's not patronise the electorate, but let's not overanalyse and project things onto them they might not be thinking.
Yeah.
This has got to be easy for Reform to win. Keir Starmer should have lost the last election for Labour with that offensive speech he made last week. All Reform have to do, in my view, is get some loudspeakers and drive around the streets playing that speech, saying this is what the clown-shoed, purple-haired, swivel-eyed Labourites in Islington think of you if you vote Reform. That's all you've got to do.
Yeah, but I mean, it was fascinating that he's not spoken out about all those horrific anti-Semitic marches, week after week after week, and he comes out and ahead of. I mean, again, I've got no candle for Tommy Robinson, but the vast majority of people on that United Kingdom rally and the last one, completely normal, law-abiding, tax-paying patriots who aren't remotely far right.
No, and also is diversity is our strength thing.
Oh, yeah.
Does that apply to Tower Hamlets Council, where if you see the picture of the Aspire party, is he going to talk about how diverse that? It's
almost entirely Bangladeshi. Again, it was going that way. I used to work. My first job was on a newspaper job was on a local paper, the East London Advertiser, covering that council. I was doing the political reporting there as well, and it was already dodgy then, and it's dodgy now, and I mean financially dodgy as well. And Lufthansa, we've had enough problems with him, and he was banned from standing at one point for a reason.
Yeah, and just on a final point, I was glad about that case you gave about the person who won the industrial tribunal.
Malaysian immigrant, yeah.
I'm in an employment dispute at the moment. Yeah. I won't go into detail on the radio, but I'll be quoting that case 100%.
Just extraordinary, isn't it? Michael, great call. Thank you very much. 11:33 is the time. Up next, going to be talking to Lord West. Alan West is a Labour peer. He's also former First Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff. Get his thoughts on Labour shenanigans, but also what the heck is going on in the Iran conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and this is Talk. Let's talk now about, well, home affairs and international affairs with my next guest. Lord West is a Labour peer and is the former First Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff. A very, very good morning to you, Lord West.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. I want to talk about what is going on in terms of the Strait of Hormuz and Iran conflict, obviously, but also, you know, you are not just a former naval man, you are also a Labour peer. I want to get what your thoughts are about this, would-be Labour leadership contest. We've had another resignation of a junior government bag carrier, PPS. This is Steve Race, MP for Exeter. He's the 8th PPS who has left government in the last few weeks. He was a PPS in the Department of Health and worked under Wes Streeting, of course, who resigned last Thursday. Andy Burnham is bidding to become an MP at Makerfield and bidding at that point, obviously, to run for the Labour leadership. Would you welcome Andy Burnham's return and his bid for leadership?
Well, I would start from a position of what a shower these MPs are. I mean, I'm afraid that that change, when you're in government, it's incremental and it's slow. It might be awful and boring. And indeed, you know, I have to say Keir Starmer is a bit boring. But I think this country needed some stability and boredom. And there were things were being done. I think there have been some major errors. There are things I don't like. I like the Chagos Islands thing. I think make your first move on taking over government, having a go at pensioners was rather stupid. It could be done a better way. So there are things like that. But overall, stability had arrived and things were slowly going the right way. And then, of course, the Iran war came. I think the MPs, I mean, I've always been amazed by MPs. I've met lots of them now. And I mean, even the thickest and most useless seems to think he could be a cabinet minister or prime minister. It is unbelievable. And I think all of those who list themselves to make major changes, to effectively change this government, throw everything up in the air, they're in a way not fit to govern. If you govern somewhere, you've got to govern it. Now, the Labour Party's only been governing for 2 years. It's got 3 years to go. They should let that happen. And then towards the end, when there's an election, that's when you make your move. To do it now is just panicky madness. And the way that they've reacted to reform, I mean, I've always rather felt, well, we can ignore reform because it's 3 years till there's an election. Let them get on with it. I mean, if you see Farage and his sort of, I don't know, assembly of 4 or something in the Commons, they're irrelevant, really.
When you say they're irrelevant, they're not irrelevant to voters. They've led the polls for basically the last year.
We will see when there's a proper vote.
Well, there was a proper vote in a local election. Only a couple of weeks ago, and that wasn't a poll, that was people choosing to bother for a local election, to leave their homes, go out, fill out a ballot paper. And what did they say? They said they didn't want Labour and they wanted reform.
Well, and I think if you're in the middle of governing and you haven't even got halfway through your time in government, you rather you say, right, we're hearing all those things. There are certain things they don't like. And indeed, as I said, there are things that Labour have done wrong, but you don't overreact to it.
OK, you're saying overreaction, but it's interesting. You say, look, people wanted a bit of stability, and yes, and turning things around is a slow thing. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I think an awful lot of people went, good God, Tories, chaos, didn't do the things they promised to do, and we dislike a bit of stability. And one of the things we all expect from Keir Starmer is he might be quietly managerially competent. Turns out, though, he's not competent. U-turn after U-turn after U-turn. He's not in charge of his own cabinet. He's not in charge of his own government. He hasn't got an idea in his head, hasn't got a philosophy, hasn't got a political ideology. He does speeches, gives speeches which he then reneges on. I'm sorry, he's not shown stability, and the reason why he's so unpopular and the reason why his own ministers want to get rid of him and his own party members want to get rid of him is because he's not very good at the job.
Well, I mean, I disagree with you about the stability. I think there has been stability there.
There's not 22 months in with a 170 majority, and he's about to be ousted. Is not stability.
Stop shouting at me, Julia. I mean, there's no doubt that before the Iran war came, a whole raft of indicators showed we were beginning to be on the right track economically. There were a whole list of them. We can go through them all. There's not much point.
No, feel free to, because I don't think there were actually. Unemployment was going up.
I think there were a whole raft of things that showed economically and that's why we led the G7, for example, in certain indicators. I think there was stability there. I would agree with you. I'm afraid Keir Starmer is not what I call a leader. You know, people sort of follow him out of curiosity rather than anything else. But he is holding a government together, and to change it now, to throw everything in the air, I know from my contacts around the world, I've got lots of colleagues in various countries. They're saying, what the hell are you doing? You know, we used to think Britain was stable. We used to think we could let them borrow money and things like that. They look at us now and saying, what are you doing? You're about to embark now on all this chaos. And I just think it's unnecessary and stupid.
Is a lot of people were discussing over the weekend, is Britain now ungovernable? Every single Prime Minister is the most unpopular ever, apart from the last one. We're going through Prime Ministers at a rate of knots. Is that because we've had a load of hopeless Prime Ministers who have reneged on the promises they've made to voters, or are voters expecting too much?
I think there is an element of the country becoming a little bit ungovernable, and there are a whole raft of reasons for that. But of course, what politicians keep doing is promising and saying we'll have change, and if change just won't happen like that, bang. I mean, if Andy Burnham, who actually he's okay, but I don't rate him as as some great sort of Superman who's going to come in and change things. He's making all sorts of promises. He'll get in, and come the general election, he won't have delivered, or probably almost any of them, because there'll be things grinding along to happen, and people will say, well, he lied to us, right, let's get rid of. So people then in the Labour Party will think, Christ, he hasn't actually made that change. Maybe we ought to change him and get whoever it is. And I just think it's a recipe for disaster. And as I say, you know, my feeling really is what a shower.
But the reality is, I mean, you're saying we'll change at the last minute, but actually that doesn't tend to work out very well. Most political parties, I mean, and lots of those MPs, your stipend, your naval pension, and your payments for going into the House of Lords, they're not dependent on winning the next general election. You've got a load of MPs who are on £99,000 a year is their salary right now, and they're going, well, hold on a minute, am I going to be able to pay my mortgage in a few years' time? That's why they want to get rid of him. They don't think he's going to win the next election. No one thinks Keir Starmer can win the next election.
Well, I have to say, I think if he stayed and stuck there and kept doing what he's doing, I think he could. But anyway, I think there are only two people who think that, and that's you and Keir Starmer. Yeah, but don't have a go at my pension, Julia. That's not fair.
Got no issue with your pension, sir.
I did a lot to do.
I have no issue with your pension, sir. I'm just saying it's not dependent on whether Keir Starmer does a good job or not. Well, let's talk about your previous life. You know, where you actually, did have to be
much sounder ground.
Yes, we did have to be a leader, and again, one of the reasons I like talking to military folk actually on this show, and I think my audience really do as well, is the clarity of thought and the clearness, because you can't do wishy-washy and not really, not do detail, because lives depend on it, and that's something I think people appreciate. Let me ask you about what you think is going on with the Iran conflict right now, because we've had Donald Trump basically backing down, he says, from a full-scale another attack on Iran. after a plea, he says, from allies, UAE, Saudi Arabia and others in the Gulf. They say there's still a chance at a last shot at a nuclear deal. Do you think there are serious negotiations for a nuclear deal? Do you think there is any deal that could get on the table that would allow both the Iranians and the Americans to climb down?
Well, I mean, I think there is discussion going on in these areas, but the bottom line is that Donald Trump is very rattled now. You can see that. He embarked on something he didn't really understand. This is not he loves deals, of course, but this is not a deal to buy an office block in New York. You know, these deals are rather more complex than that. And one can see you just need to look at him to see he's rattled by all of this. Yeah. These constant threats of doing this and doing that and then stopping doing it. I mean, you know, that makes you look very weak, and that doesn't help at all. And I have to say the business of him saying the way to open the straits is for me to block it as well is just bizarre.
But the argument there is if the Iranians block it to the rest of the world shipping, but they're able to get their own oil tankers and LNG tankers out, then that's an incentive there. But when they can't and they do that, and they were losing $500 million a day with the US blockade, that will focus minds and bring them to the table. Here's the thing, though: is it possible to negotiate a peace deal with, you know, religious lunatics who are waiting for their 72 virgins and who aren't in a democracy, who don't care how much this hurts the people of Iran, the 90 million population? Is it possible to negotiate a deal that has any meaning, that will actually be held to in those circumstances?
Is it 72? I thought it was 24. Obviously, there's real offer going there. I mean, the bottom line, I think, is that before all this started, there was a thing called the JCPOA.
Yeah.
Within that deal that was negotiated, which Trump then said is rubbish and threw out, there was a bit, for example, on nuclear, where they said we will not enrich beyond the level, and I can't remember the exact level, 95%, any more than whatever it is.
It was very low.
They were to have IAEA coming around inspecting all the time, and I think that put a sort of check on it.
But it didn't, because they enriched to 60%, which is close to getting a nuclear weapon, and they didn't allow, and they hid this from the inspectors.
But that's because the JCPOA was thrown out straight away. I think but that's where they'll end up with a deal, I believe, something like that again.
But that will be, so basically Donald Trump, after all of this and the hit to the world economy, Donald Trump will basically end up exactly where he was before.
That's what I think will happen, and it's dreadful, isn't it? It shows what an absolute error in judgment he made. It was
but should we not try and tackle Iran's ability to develop a nuclear weapon, because the power that they've had closing the Strait of Hormuz and threats to then not just to Israel but to their Gulf neighbours as well. I think 9 of their neighbours they have fired missiles at. Their threats even to not just their oil capacity and production, but also desalination plants. And when we're talking about 90% of water in some of these countries being desalinated water, we're talking about absolute disaster there. The fact they're able to do that, and that's without a nuclear weapon, does it not show that actually we need to act to stop Iran getting the ultimate weapon of mass destruction, nuclear weapon?
We certainly don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons.
How do we stop that?
You only need to look at North Korea, who they didn't stop getting it, and who are now developing longer range ballistic missiles to reach not only the UK but Europe as well, to see the real risks there. I don't think what he's done has achieved that. The only way to be absolutely certain of stopping it is to invade Iran, and he's not going to do that.
No.
That means you'd have to mobilise, get all his troops. There would be huge casualties. Of course, America could do it, and allies would join her. But that would be catastrophic. I cannot see any easy way otherwise. We talk about the religious nutcases, and there are an awful lot of them. And I think there are probably less now in Iran than there were at the top, because basically the Americans and the Israelis killed so many of them.
There you are then.
But as a very hard-line military and IRGC who are very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I don't feel this story is going away anytime soon. Alan, Lord West, absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Very plain speaking, always appreciated. Labour peer, former First Sea Lord and Chief of the Naval Staff. Thank you for that. Tom Slater, whether you want to come back in or around, or Lord West, very open, very plain speaking. What a shower. Even the thickest and most useless Labour MPs think they could be cabinet ministers. I mean, he wasn't holding back.
He wasn't, and it's a reminder, isn't it, that just the dearth of talent in the Labour Party these days. I mean, people would be forgiven for forgetting. The Labour Party used to produce quite serious people, even if you disagreed with them.
Yeah.
None of the contenders, even the ones who are slightly more plausible than the others, are anywhere near what they had in the past. So it's not great for the Labour Party, but in particular it's not great for the country.
No,
because they will stagger on for a while yet.
Absolutely. 11:48 is the time. Let's take a quick break. Up next, we'll be talking about lawless Britain. That's up next with Mike Neville, former Met Police at DCI. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk about lawless Britain, as Tom Slade, who's joined me for the whole show, and I have been talking about with this apparent crackdown, we're told, on the old dodgy barbers and vape shops and little mini-marts on our high streets that have been going crazy and are basically laundering money, involved in people trafficking, illegal working, you name it. Certainly ain't paying tax on anything. Apparently, there's finally going to be a crackdown on them. What took the police so long? Let's talk about this with Mike Neville. He's a former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector. Thank you, as always, for joining us, Mike. I have to say, whenever I see these stories about a crackdown on this, shoplifting, a crackdown on that, you know, the vape shops, whatever, the rest of us just go, well, what have you been doing for the last 10 years?
Yeah, so, well, greetings from Spain. I'm in Valencia at the moment, so Julius, it's nice weather.
All right,
so, but yes, you're absolutely right, because all of us have walked down the high street and you wonder, don't you, why there's like 6 or 7 barber shops. And, I think Luton had the most with 145. You walk down Oxford Street, you see these candy shops which have got no one in them at all, no customers, and there's several of them. And, you know, the rents, imagine what the rent is in Oxford Street to get a shop. And you see these vape shops. You know, they're estimating that £1 billion in criminal money goes through them. Well, that's probably means about 10 billion pounds goes through it. And I think what we do is all the people who are paying tax just look at these and think, you know, the government are after every penny that I earn. They're looking into every way of getting my money. And yet these people are allowed to run some dodgy barber shops where there's 3 brand new Mercedes parked at the back and no customers inside.
Also, by the way, anyone ever tried to take cash out of their bank at any point to pay for something, to, you know, genuinely, you're asked that many questions. They've actually withheld. I go, no, we're not going to give this money. I'm going, no, I mean, that was nothing dodgy at all. It wasn't taxable, it wasn't anything. I'm like, no, it's none of your sodding business what I'm taking my only money out for. No, I want my money is legitimately there and I can take it out and spend it on anything I want. And it is extraordinary. But these people act with absolute impunity and they impact local wages, they massively impact criminality. And I was saying, you know, I live in an area, we've got one sort of OK high street, a few dodgies, one very fancy schmancy, and one Absolutely. I would say every other store there is doing something dodgy. I mean, I'm sorry, but like you look. And by the way, not a single person I speak to in any of those shops when I have gone in them, or not any single one of them is speaking English with an English accent, if they're speaking English at all. An awful lot of this is foreigners who have come here, maybe legally here, but they're not acting legally when they are here. Sorry, why is that being allowed?
Well, I'll tell you, the trouble is, again, Julie, the worst thing, you forget being a paedophile or a murderer or something, a rapist, the worst thing you can be in this country is a racist, you see. So anybody who challenges, a shop where the people aren't white British must be doing it for some wicked and evil way. Couldn't care what colour
their skin is. If you're clearly not English and you're committing anything more than, a speeding fine, bye. If I went to another country and I committed a crime, I would expect to be deported.
Yeah, absolutely. But you can just see these people are not stupid. They organise criminals.
Yeah.
The barbershops in particular, it's a good thing to do barbershops because you don't have to have a licence or anything to be a barber. There's no regulation around those shops. The other thing I hear about, where there is registration where dodgy money goes, is these dentist places, where you have a set of circuit teeth and all this. Because you can say that the treatment costs £30,000 and you can do very little. So the trouble with the barbers is you've got to keep putting 20 notes through the system, whereas the dentist you can put £30,000 through. So, but all these things need to be looked at, and we need these council officials to stop worrying, and the police involved as well, trading standards and the police, to stop worrying about being called racist and get on with protecting our societies and removing this criminality,
But that's it. But what took so long? We had a BBC investigation showing all these mini marts. Apparently, you can pay to have your cousin come over on a boat and pay the illegal smugglers that way. But I'm sorry, was anyone under any illusion this wasn't already happening? Why does it take something on the front page of the BBC website for the Home Secretary and the police to act?
Because it's like the grooming gangs, Julie. It's best ignored because it clashes. You see, you've got to imagine these people belong to a cult, and parts of the cult's belief are things like climate change, multiculturalism, and anything that flies in the face of that. Anything that flies in the face of that, it's best ignore it. Just let it go away.
But yet the criminality in our streets is off the scale. And as you say, and something we were discussing earlier, the resentment that ordinary, hard-working, tax-paying people feel, and also, by the way, the shops on those same, high streets that are doing the right thing, they are being priced out. You can't run a pub in an area like that and serve booze at the pub prices because people are buying it round the back of the mini-mart, on the cheap. I mean, it's just extraordinary. I mean, and again, the shoplifting thing, you and I have discussed many times. So let's play that video. For those who are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this video. A group of about a dozen young men, all wearing hoodies and face coverings. I mean, what a surprise. They're in a JD Sports in East London. And basically, they just started grabbing stuff. They're in Ilford. They grab stuff at the weekend, and then they basically, alarm goes off. They barge past. They're trying to get out on these little escalators, and they're grabbing stuff. And all credit, because the young female staff there, not the security guards, they're grabbing the lads, they're pulling at them, they're grabbing the clothes off them. Really quick reactions. I mean, we've seen enough security guards in supermarkets, Morrison's, Waitrose, and everyone who've been sacked, and it was an M&S being sacked for doing the right thing there. I'm hoping these girls got a pay rise and haven't lost their jobs, but this is out of control.
It is absolutely out of control, and you get these bleeding hearts who tell us it's all about poverty. This is nothing about poverty. It's about wickedness and greed. It's about knowing, when people say, they'll face the consequences, these people know what the consequences are. Nothing. There are no 12-month sentences, so you're never going to get more than that for theft. They know that the police solved 1% of crimes. No one has been arrested for this incident. So these people have considered the consequences. They've weighed it in the balance and thought, you know what, I'm going to carry on doing this because it's easy and there's nothing going to happen to me. And until we change that, until we make it that if you steal, if you cause misery, you'll go to jail, and you'll go to jail for a substantial amount of time, nothing will change.
Absolutely. I've said we build, and we go, well, enough prison places. Build more prisons. And no, I don't think that lads like that need to be behind, brick walls and things. I'm pretty sure we can build some little prison camps very, very quickly.
But David Lammy was trying to tell us that we shouldn't send people to prison unless they're over 18. I was a soldier at 16. I knew the consequences of life at 16 years old. You know what's good and bad when you're 10.
Yeah, well, they're talking about raising criminal age criminal responsibility to 14. I mean, again, it depends, because you look. They say some children, that they know perfectly well that these children absolutely knew what they were doing. But this is the thing, they know what they're doing, as you say. I mean, people a bunch of lads in hoodies and face masks. I mean, the security guard should have gone, get out of here. Don't even think about it. You're not coming in. But it should be down to them, and it should be down to stores, and it certainly shouldn't be down to some sort of teenage girls who are working in the store to be. We need to stop this criminality. I mean, full scale. And the only way you do that, as you say, is consequences, and those consequences need to be really quite nasty. And I say, I'm volunteering myself to any government that is willing to do that. I'm happy to take charge, but I want full control of what happens. But I'm telling you, I can sort this out. In fact, I'll get Michael come in and be one of my advisors. We can sort this out in a matter of weeks. As soon as the message is heard loud and clear, remember they used that on the Southport riots. You have to have people going to prison straight away, straight through the courts, because that's the message that people understand. Well, let's try a little bit of that with this.
Absolutely, Julia. Absolutely.
Right, are you going to come and work with me? Yeah. Whoever the government is, you and me. Come on, we'll get it sorted.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I think our signal's breaking up in Spain, but I would gladly be an advisor for the Home Office, but I don't think they like what I have to say. Let's hope there's a new style government who actually takes its law and order seriously,
absolutely.
So we can lock up the bad people.
Fantastic to have you on, Mike Neville, former Met DCI. Sorry for the quality of the line at the end there, but I thought, well, what's that hesitation? Surely he agrees with you on this. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, Tom Slater, we've been discussing this all morning. I mean, we just need to take action. This is just an abject failure of the state. No, absolutely. They should try enforcing the law. This is a neat little idea. Crazy blue sky thinking on talk this morning, but never catch on. Give it a try. 6 months. Let's at least see if it works. Yeah. Let's see if it works. Exactly. Coming up, we're going to go to the news at the top of the hour. After that, we're going to be talking about all these U-turns on the EU, from Andy Burnham, Wes Streeting, the Prime Minister. We know they want to take us back into the U-turn. Do you think it will ever happen? We'll be talking to the brilliant Leave campaigner Daniel Hannan about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past midday is the time. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Have we got a rip-roaring hour ahead for you? If you haven't missed anything of the show so far, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. But whether you are listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your Connect device, it's fabulous to have your company, and also the company of Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. I love it. As soon as I say the name of my guest in the studio, they suddenly sort of sit up straight and pay attention. No, I'm not going to come to you. We're going to be discussing that poll of Labour Party members showing that Andy Burnham would decisively beat Keir Starmer and even more decisively Wes Streeting in a head-to-head leadership contest. That, of course, all assumes that Andy Burnham will be the candidate in Makerfield. Oh, yes, small point. And that he wins that seat. They have moved the writ today for that by-election to take place on the 18th of June. But Andy Burnham is being accused of a bunch of U-turns, not just on rejoining the EU, not a good look in a Brexit voting and reform voting seat, but also saying he'll now agree with sticking to Rachel Reeves' borrowing rules. But does that mean all his promises of building all these council houses and the like is actually completely pie in the sky stuff? Plus, we're going to be talking about Married at First Sight UK. It's a spin-off from the absolutely huge Australian original. It's got 3 million views on Channel 4. It's one of their biggest shows. So it's not on the series right now, but a previous series have been taken off air after 2 women say they were raped during the filming of one of these series, and a third has described an allegation of a non-consensual sex act. No one has gone to the police. The men have denied any wrongdoing, but suddenly everyone is hysterical and saying that the producers should have known what was going on behind closed doors, even though they were not told at the time, and we should be taking these sorts of shows off air. Is that a reasonable reaction to that? Plus, we're also going to be talking about Britain has backtracked on its pledge to ban slave labour from its renewable supply chain as part of Ed Miliband's bid to meet his hilarious net zero targets. But yeah, slave labour is not really something to worry about when you've got the chance to have more solar and wind power, is it, Ed? I mean, don't tell me these people have got morals. They really don't. Tom Slater, as I say, is joining us. Before we go to our first guest in this hour, EU is already just like literally exploded as a subject, the Brexit as a subject in this Makerfield by-election. I don't think many people thought it would, but certainly we're looking at a seat which Andy Burnham has decided to run in to try and get back into Parliament after being Greater Manchester Mayor for a number of years, to get back into Parliament to basically run for the Labour leadership. That's what most Labour Party members want, it would appear. Most Labour MPs, it seems, would support him as well. He's been a bit scuppered by one of his rivals, Wes Streeting, and now the Prime Minister, actually, interestingly, putting his tuppence worth in, talking about Brexit and talking about wanting to rejoin the EU. Prime Minister yesterday basically said that a debate on Brexit might happen years down the line. Andy Burnham's been accused of a U-turn, so he'd gone from King of the North to King of the U-turns after backtracking on in a speech he gave at Party Conference Labour last autumn, where he said, you know, he would want to rejoin the EU. He's been very clear about that, and he said he hopes it happens in our lifetime, in his lifetime. Is that? I mean, he's saying Brexit's not an issue in this particular by-election. Of course, Reform did very well in the local elections, and it voted 2/3 for Brexit back in 2016. Is that a U-turn by Andy Burnham?
Of course it is, and this is what Andy Burnham does. I think this one is particularly damaging and humiliating for him, given the fact that he is hoping to stand in a pretty heavily Leave seat. And whilst I think a lot of people, whether they Leave or Remain, would rather we just didn't reopen this whole question, it is a reminder that Brexit was the event which essentially severed the link, long fraying, between the working class, particularly of the North and of the Midlands, and the Labour Party, their traditional political home. Not just because the vast majority of the Labour movement campaigned for Remain, whereas the majority of the working classes voted for Leave, but also because they spent years during the kind of Brexit interregnum trying to overturn that vote. So any reminder of that is going to be politically toxic, and rightly so, because they came so close to betraying particularly those voters who they are now deigning to ask, could you vote for us and take a chance on us again?
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about this with our next guest, the now non-affiliated peer, but of course he was a Conservative MEP and a leading light in the campaign for Brexit, Lord Daniel Hannan. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, so you played an absolutely blind during the Leave campaign. I'm still very grateful to you for that. And you've been someone, you've got a column in the Sunday Telegraph, and you know, and you write very openly about these things. just dealing with Andy Burnham specifically, is what he's saying now, is that a U-turn on what he has said previously?
I think it is, because they all agreed, all the Remainers, that this was a once-in-a-lifetime vote and there'd never be another one. So in that sense, I think almost every Labour MP was, when they said they accepted the result, it's now clear, was saying that with their fingers crossed behind their backs. They obviously want to go back in. They know that the public is unlikely to vote to go back in on the terms that the EU will set. And I think this is really almost a culture war rather than a practical political programme. It's about signalling that you're still upset about Brexit, that you still dislike the people who voted for it, and that you're an internationalist, anti-racist, cosmopolitan sort of person. And I think that the danger is that that is the worst possible frame of mind in which to approach the reset with the EU, because you're coming at it as a penitent rather than looking for the...
And have we not done that throughout? I mean, this is one of the things we've often we hear from the, and I would say from Remoaners, not Remainers, not people who quite reasonably chose to vote for Remain but accepted the result. And I know a number of people in my bus life who voted Remain but actually voted to, quote, get Brexit done in the 2019 election because they felt it was outrageous that the biggest democratic vote for anything this country has ever voted on was actually trying to be overturned undemocratically. And I'm still, to this day, so proud of the British people for the fact that people didn't end up, and I'd have been there with them if it had been necessary, turn up with pitchforks at the House of Commons over that outrageous behaviour by Remoaners in Parliament in 2019, and leading among them Keir Starmer. But this is the thing, isn't it, is that they keep saying, look, it's been chaos, catastrophic, is how one senior Labour figure described it, the decision to leave the EU. They're under this illusion, and I want to talk about what would happen in the future in a moment, but in terms of what happened as a result of Brexit, they seem to think that everything that has ever gone wrong in Britain was as a result of Brexit. They don't think we had a lockdown. We don't think we had an international pandemic. Certainly don't think we had a Ukraine war, indeed an Iran conflict, or any other bad decisions in government. Everything that has gone wrong in this country is down to Brexit. Is that true?
Well, exactly. It's their frame of mind, isn't it? And everything is slotted into that, despite the fact that we've outperformed all the comparable Western European economies, right? So, who knew that Brexit was going to be such a disaster for France, Germany, Italy, and so on? But I think of it like this. We were in a closed, dark room in the EU, and it was bearable. It was comfortable enough. There were advantages. Brexit was the moment when we opened the door, and we could see the sunshine outside, and we could see the swallows swooping, and we could feel the fresh air. But we have sat on the doorstep. We haven't gone out into the meadow. We haven't taken advantage of the trade and regulatory opportunities we had. And on the very few occasions that we have, it's been a huge success. So we've diverged from EU rules on AI. You can have Apple Intelligence on your phone in a way that you can't if you buy it in Europe. We've diverged on gene editing and biotech. We've diverged on trade in that we've joined the fastest growing bloc in the world, the Pacific Partnership. But we refuse to learn from that lesson. And the vast majority of things, we are still just copying what we did in the EU. Or, in the case of energy policy, we're actually imposing tougher rules on ourselves than we had to do as EU members. And so it's crazy to have gone through the exit talks that we did, demanding and paying quite a high price in those talks for the freedom to diverge. Price. And then not exercise that freedom, right? That is, I think we can all agree.
But isn't that partly, it's not just the Labour Party that wouldn't want that. Actually, large swathes of the Tory Party, and certainly the civil service blob, did their best to stop it from happening.
The civil service blob had a bigger role in stopping it happening than almost anyone who hasn't been up close watching this will believe. The number of times that I saw ministers instructing their officials to do things, and Sir Humphrey never says no. He just smiles and says, "Very good, Minister," and then nothing happens. Yeah. And this has been our tragedy for ever since the vote. We've just not been able to take control back in the hands of elected people, i.e. the general public.
But don't you think there's a lot of conversation going on the weekend about how Britain is now ungovernable because we've gone through so many prime ministers in so few years, and how this was a sign of instability and awfulness? I interpret it very differently. I wonder if you agree with me or not. That actually, we said, right, we want to take back control, thank you, and then people reneged. Theresa May reneged, and then Boris Johnson didn't do at all what he said he was going to do. Yes, we got the Brexit deal, and he probably got the best deal available after basically Britain had been undermined by the Ramonas and the civil service. But then, we were supposed to take back control of our borders, and then he allowed a ridiculous Boris wave of mass migration and the like. And that actually what is happening with people basically saying, no, not you, you're rubbish, next is actually, this is Brexit in action. It is the British public saying, you're in charge, we've put you in charge, if you don't do what we say, we're going to get rid of you and go to the next one. Is this not democracy in action?
I think there was an interesting point that is almost always missed in this debate, which is that, in your chronology there, Julia, Parliament passed a law saying we will not leave the EU except on terms that Brussels is happy with. They didn't use that phrase. They said, we will not allow a no-deal Brexit. But if you think about it, that means exactly the same thing. So is it any surprise that the terms were not what they might have been? But to answer the question of have we become Italian, have we become ungovernable, I actually don't think this is primarily about Brexit. I think it is about our reluctance as a nation to recognise that we are living beyond our means, that we massively increased spending during the pandemic, that those spending increases that were presented to us as temporary and contingent are now treated as an immemorial part of the Constitution that nobody is allowed to touch, and therefore our taxes are going up without any improvement in public services to pay for those 2 years when we borrowed from our future selves in order to stay at home and not produce anything but continue to be subsidised by the
government. Didn't expect to have to pay for it one day. We're basically trying to have Christmas Day every day. We're never facing our January.
That is the fundamental problem. And it's all very well to blame the politicians, and I do blame them, but a democracy gets the politicians it deserves. Until we are prepared to accept that we are living beyond our means, that we've become like an obese person who wants to become fit, and that is going to involve some short-term pain, we're going to need some spending cuts, then it really is not reasonable to keep on blaming the politicians for giving us the policies that we keep demanding.
The voters want to take Ozempic or Manjaro and not have to face the pain, and that is the trouble. Now, one of the things I've been arguing with people, maybe say, we keep being Brexit voters repent and wish they hadn't voted for Brexit. I'm not joking. I would absolutely not make this claim if it was not true. Never met a single Brexit voter who has not been more convinced by every single reaction to Brexit that we did the right thing in voting for Brexit. I still want to, in the top 10 days of my life, waking up to that result, having gone to bed thinking that we'd lost. It was just wonderful. And to this, will be always, for me, a wonderful day. Now, when people like, whether it's Andy Burnham, whether it's Wes Streeting, whether it's Keir Starmer or anyone else says the Green Party leader, the Lib Dem leader, we want to go back in to the EU, I'm like, fine. You have the same terms that we had to get our departure from the EU, and that is you run for election, you have a manifesto saying there will be a referendum, you win that election with a majority, you then have your referendum, and on that basis you can then argue for going back, you can take us back in. That, to me, would be democracy. I've got no issue with that. I'm happy to offer those terms on the basis that I don't believe for a nanosecond that referendum would be won by rejoin. Tell us what the terms are likely to be, or what they are, what the bits we know they would be, if we were to say, hello, Brussels, turns out we made a horrible mistake, 10 plus years ago, and we'd like to rejoin. What terms are you offering?
Well, we know that we would have to give up the pound. We know that we would have
to
give up our borders, join the euro, join Schengen. We know that we would have no rebate, and the budget is a hell of a lot bigger than it was. And we know, because of the way we've seen Eurocrats behave, that they would add extra punitive terms because they're still angry about Brexit and they would want to give us a bit of a kicking. And for this reason, I don't think that Andy Burnham or Keir Starmer or Zach Polanski actually thinks that there is a practical plan to go back in. I think this is a bit like the Jacobites in the 18th century who had this emotional investment in bringing back the old dynasty, but they didn't really have any practical plan to do it, and they'd have been horrified, actually, in many cases, if it had happened, right? So it's much more a tribal badge, I am a Remainer, than it is a practical plan. When you
I'm a good person.
Yeah. Though when you go, to the last night of the proms and you see all those elderly Lib Dems with their funny berets or the
EU flags
shouting outside their EU flags, these are not people who have been following what's been happening in the EU. Right? These are not people who are remotely interested in what's happening in Brussels. They're not interested, for example, in the nearly 1,000 regulations that we have not had to apply to our own domestic economy as a result of Brexit. They're not interested in the fact that we missed out on having to shell out for the massive COVID recovery plan that all the EU countries are on the hook. It's not that they've weighed and rejected these arguments. They're just not interested in the EU as a practical proposition. They're interested in being Remainers, right, rather than in actually rejoining the EU.
Yeah, it's utterly fascinating. As you said, you pointed out about the issue of AI, and again, there is a reason why AI hasn't happened in Europe, why there isn't a single big tech company from Europe, why there isn't a single university in the top 20 in the world that's in the whole of Europe. They did used to have 5 out of 50 in Europe, in the EU, but they were all in Britain. So when we left, they lost them. I mean, there's a reason why, and it's because of the EU. I'm always fascinated by this. I'm fascinated by whether it's, MPs or peers or civil servants, you say ordinary people, what their fascination is with the idea that being run by Brussels, being run jointly by the leaderships of other countries near us, why they think that would make Britain a better run country. Is this just an utter strong belief in technocracy and bureaucracy, and that somehow that is better? Is it that they think that the Europeans are nice people and we're not? Is it just that they think that, let's be honest, that British voters are, as the Prime Minister seems to have told us on a regular basis, these ghastly, ignorant, racist bigots who simply can't be trusted with running their own country?
Well, there's an element of that, right? What my late friend Roger Scruton used to call the Down With Us party, that would always side with anyone else. There is an element to which, there's an extent to which British officials and quangocrats, when they arrive in Brussels, immediately discern that it is a system designed by and for people like them. Yeah. But I don't think that either of those is preponderant, because, as I say, I don't think there really is a practical plan to rejoin, because they know that they would lose a referendum. Go back to what you were saying about the morning that you woke up, and it was that beautiful rosy sunrise. I remember it very well, 24th of June.
I've got goosebumps.
Right, but we've got to recall that for them, they felt the opposite, right? Yeah. We should be fair-minded about this. If you were emotionally invested in the other side, you would have woken up thinking, oh my God, I don't recognise my country, because you by then convince yourself that the only reason to vote Leave was xenophobia or hostility to foreigners. And so I think what's driving them is a kind of attempt to make restitution for that. It's not really about rejoining. And the point that you just made about our universities is very telling here. After we left the EU, we got out of the very expensive Erasmus scheme, which required us to fund EU students at our universities. Yeah. Now, it is true that worked the other way around as well, but because of the imbalance that you mentioned and because of the languages, we had many, many, many more EU nationals coming to our universities than the other way around. We were shelling out hundreds of millions of pounds. It'll now be billions of pounds. We had replaced Erasmus with a much better scheme, the Turing scheme. It was better in every way. It was cheaper for the taxpayer. It covered the whole world instead of just Europe. Yep. And it reached many more low-income students, giving them opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have had. And yet Labour have rushed back into Erasmus without once making a claim that it's better in practical terms. I have not heard a single Labour MP saying this is a superior model to the thing we were doing under Turing. It's just pure vibes. It's pure, oh, I'm a European, I'm a nice person. And that ultimately is the worst possible mindset in which to approach your relations with the EU.
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, if we go back to the EU, especially if it was after a referendum, the terms we would be given would be so appallingly bad. They would be sitting in meetings cackling about, oh, I know what, and let's ask for Keir Starmer, whoever it is, his firstborn. I mean, the stuff they would ask for, and bearing in mind the negotiation skills of our civil servants and our politicians over things like Chagos and goodness knows what else, it doesn't bear thinking about. But again, as I've always said to those Remoaners, and I go, Remainers got no disrespect to anyone who voted Remain, perfectly legitimate position, but to the Remoaners, bring it on, happy to play, and I'm sure you will be as well. Lord Hannon, pleasure to have your company. It's non-affiliated peer. Thank you so much for joining us, Dan Hannon there. Tom Slater, listening to all of that. I mean, you were a keen Brexiteer as well. I mean, these politicians are living in fantasy land, aren't they? But again, I think this is like wearing a Palestine flag. Yep. It's like having a little blue heart for the NHS in your biog. It's it was like the wearing the masks, for a long time, longer than anyone. Once the evidence was very clear, there wasn't going to be, they didn't stop COVID. It's a way of signalling, look, I'm a good person, not like you who voted for Leave.
And Dan Hannon made the very important point that we should be fair-minded in relation to our opponents. On the other hand, just for a moment, given the tirade of abuse that Brexit voters and campaigners were subjected to after that vote told people were racist, thick, that they were hoodwinked by these demagogues.
By a bus.
That we were all low information. If you talk even to quite high-ranking Remain campaigners, you'd be amazed about how uninformed and low information they are about the European Union.
Yeah.
When it came down to it, the British public made not only the correct decision, but also the informed decision that this is not an institution that we wanted anything to do with. And going back to Dan's point, we should remember what a great day that was.
Can we all just have a moment? Can we all just have a moment where we remember that wonderful moment of the biggest democratic vote for anything in this country ever? And it was a beautiful sunshiny day, and the British people spoke, and then the British sort of upper classes, the political class, spat in our faces. Yeah, funnily enough, we hold that against them. Still do.
Exactly.
But there we are.
Great moment.
Still got the goosebumps. 12:23 is the time. Up next, going to take your calls. Love to hear your thoughts on U-turns, on everything, on vape crackdown. We're going to be talking in the next 10 minutes or so about that crackdown on reality TV and Married at First Sight UK after claims from some of the women involved that they had been raped, none of whom have gone to the police. Allegations have been denied. And why on earth are producers responsible for what happens behind closed doors? That's up next. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:26 is the time. Let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Have your say on anything and everything, in particular these Andy Burnham U-turns and rejoining the EU, and also whether or not he would stick to the government's current borrowing rules. Well, he says he would on that. They're fiscal rules, which mean it basically you can't borrow any more money than you're actually, by the end of this parliament, than you're actually taking in tax. Trouble is, our taxes are going up and up and up, but most of that money is not being spent on where we would like it, on dealing with crime, building prisons, benefits for people who deserve them, not just anyone who claims they're anxious on a Monday morning. There's actually £110 billion being borrowed as well every single year to pay for our borrowing interests on previous borrowing. I mean, it is mind-blowing. Where is all the money going? And can he actually deliver on any of his promises if he is going to stick to those so-called fiscal rules? Well, let's go to Vernon, who is in Staffordshire and wants to have his say. Hello, Vernon.
Julia, good afternoon to you. The arrogance of these people is just stale. So the largest democratic vote was held to leave the EU, and with no mandate, step by step, day by day, they're overturning it, which, in my opinion, is treason. They're going against the citizens of the country, not consulting us. They just want to join a failed the EU because it's good for Sakir and his little jollies. I mean, you know, he'll be able to, when he gets kicked out shortly, he'll be able to have a nice little job in the EU. It's just preposterous. And Andy Burnham, the arrogance of the man. I mean, if he was made of chocolate, he'd eat himself. Just imagine this. Imagine this. Oh, I'm the mayor of Manchester. Oh, toodle pip. Off you go. We'll get rid of you. I'll stand. And then I'll leave you and I'll go and be PM of the country.
Well, there is an element, isn't there? When Downing Street kept saying, well, look, you know, he promised he would be stood for a 5-year term. He promised he would stand for the full 5 term. And people asked him at the time, yeah, but if there ends up being a seat coming free, you might want to come back. And no. So, I mean, you know, they've got a point. He is breaking a promise.
Julia, the definition of a politician is a pathological liar. I'm sorry to use such strong words, but I'm sick to death of all of the people in Westminster. If they walk in a straight line, they'd fall over. But they don't. They just lie.
You are not impressed.
Not at all, Julia. Would you be?
No, I'm with you. I mean, again, I think he's trying like this. He wants to please the people of Makerfield, and then he wants to please Labour MPs, and Labour voters, and then he's got to try and win back some of those people who went to the Greens and went to Reform. I don't think you can please all of those 4 or 5 different groups. I just don't think you can.
I'd like you to please 1 or 2. How about pleasing the citizens? How about doing your goddamn job, what you were elected to do, which means you are a servant of the citizens of this country. Your opinions don't matter. You do what we tell you to do. That's your job. If you can't do it, then just get lost.
Well, also, don't say you're going to do stuff or not do stuff and then renege on that. You know, I mean, silly things like that, eh? Vernon, appreciate that. Thank you. Let's go to Sally in Monmouth. Sally, are you as downhearted as Vernon is?
Well, yes, I'm downhearted, but I'm ringing up about shoplifting.
Yeah.
I've got a suggestion for shoplifters that doesn't involve prison.
Mm-hmm.
Now, under £200, it's not been decriminalised. It's a summary offence, which means less paperwork for the police.
Yeah.
And it was the police who decided not to bother with it. Now, if you get done for stealing £100 worth of goods by shoplifting, you pay double the value for the first offence. Second offence, you pay 4 times the value.
Yep.
Third offence, you pay 8 times the value.
That sounds great. I love it. Except they'll go, haven't got any money.
Well, that's tough. But by the time they
haven't got any money, they're not going to pay a fine.
Well, they will. They then go to prison for non-payment of fines.
Why not just a very, very simple, the message has gone out, is everyone clear? First offence, fine, but a big fine. Second offence, prison, nothing to discuss. I just think that's much simpler. I just don't think... You've got to remember, they're sitting there with a risk. They're going, I'm going to go out and I'm going to steal. I've got a less than 1% chance of getting caught or let alone prosecuted. And I can steal 200 or 300 quid's worth of stuff every single day for God knows how long. And at some point, I might get a fine and I might get prosecuted and I might have to pay 200 quid. They don't care.
Well, they don't care about going to prison either, a lot of them.
I think a lot of them would be...
It won't happen.
Well, they don't care about it because they think it won't happen. They would care about it if it happened and it was a realistic prospect that it would happen. That's the key thing for me. If literally we saw someone doing this, the security guards and stuff, everyone was allowed to literally just pin them down using whatever violence is necessary, and then till the police came, and they were guaranteed, because there's always proof, I mean, they've got the goods on them, they're walking out the shop, that they will go to prison. I think they would start to care. I just think we need to stop messing around.
Well, there is that, but it was just a thought that because we don't have enough prison places, so they're saying we can't prosecute because we can't.
No, we do have enough prison places. We build more prisons. We didn't have enough hospital places. I think we're in an emergency, and I think we need to take... You wouldn't need to need these prison places for long, because you could sort it out. It's the same people doing it. It's not like when there were 100 thefts on a high street. It's not 100 different people. It's the same, 5 people doing it all.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It is, exactly. But no, it was just a thought that might work as an interim.
As an interim, yeah. I don't think it takes that long to build these bases. I think where there's a will, where's a way. We could absolutely deal with it. But I mean, I like the cut of that idea, though, Sally. Thank you for that. Right now, before we go to a break, I want to tell you about this is a seriously good competition. The FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here, and thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at talkSPORT are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas. I'm very happy to be your friend, to see England v Croatia live on June the 17th, with return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets, and your very own Adidas official match ball trianda. Be at England's football game, at the FIFA World Cup, and one of the world's best stadiums. Ready to get that winning feeling? Here is how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
Very good luck with that. I am available on June the 17th. I'm just throwing that out there. Let's go to a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking about a lot of clutching indeed, of pearls by the great and the good. Their horror at reality television after allegations of rape behind closed doors. The hit TV series on Channel 4, Married at First Sight UK. But are people being reasonable about their expectations about what a TV production company can do to protect women? We'll talk about that with Mark Stevens, a media lawyer, up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:36 is the time. Right, let's talk about Married at First Sight UK. It's something I did quite a lot at home. I'm going to be very open with you. This series, particularly the Australian original, one of my favourite TV shows. Absolutely love it, and I think it's great viewing. I love the fact you get couples who end up actually getting married and having kids and totally genuine. I love all the drama. I love the dresses. I love it all. It's great fun TV viewing, and a lot of other people think the same. It's been a smash hit around the world, many different countries. The The UK version is in its 10th series on Channel 4 and E4, and sometimes garners as many as 3 million viewers, which is very much one of the top shows on Channel 4. Now they've had to pull all past episodes of the channel after allegations made to the BBC Panorama shown last night from 2 women who've appeared as, well, would-be wives on that show, who claimed they were raped during the filming of the show, and another who described an allegation of a non-consensual sex act. It's claimed that by the women themselves, and indeed by critics of the show, that the show did not do enough to protect them. Well, let's talk about this with media lawyer Mark Stevens, who joins us. A very good afternoon to you, Mark.
Afternoon, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, you've been very much involved in some legal work, with some of these shows. Now, we've had lots of criticisms of reality TV shows before. I remember my own colleague, Jeremy Kyle, before he was here, the Jeremy Kyle show, was quite wrongly and outrageously accused of being in some way to blame for the suicide of a man who appeared in a show that never even aired. That was absolutely made completely clear in the coroner's report that simply was not the case. We've had Love Island contestants who have taken their own lives. These things are all absolutely tragedies and very, very sad. However, I'm not being convinced, and never been convinced, that it's being on a TV show that is the cause of these things. These allegations are very, very different. The allegations is that these events happened behind closed doors. In a couple of the cases, the producers were not told. In one of the cases, they were told, and at the point when they were told that the woman felt unsafe, the action was immediately taken. In one of these cases, the couple actually left the show, and the woman who's now complaining and who's been public and spoken on camera, showing her identity, she actually carried on in a relationship with this man for 6 weeks afterwards. How much responsibility do producers on a TV show on which grown adults willingly choose to participate, how much are they responsible for what goes on quite literally behind closed doors?
Well, I think this isn't necessarily just about individual misconduct. I think it's also about structurally unsafe formats. Reality TV formats like Married at First Sight are designed to isolate, dislocate, destabilise and accelerate intimacy and amplify stress. That makes the harm that occurs foreseeable. We know that some of the people on these shows are, shall we say, individuals, maybe vulnerable individuals. And the difficulty I think we have is that they are aware of the format, but the consent that they get, I don't think, is really that informed, because
they've not been inside it.
Psychological pressure.
Okay. But couldn't you say the same thing about someone who, wants to be a pop star and they don't, well, I didn't realise I'd be touring all the time and I'd be away from my family and there'd be all this pressure. There's an awful, someone who joins up on some, as a trainee at a top bank, paid a fortune out of university. They don't realise what it's like. They go, I don't mind working an 80-hour week. Well, yeah, when you're doing an 80-hour week for 2 years at a time, you might realise it. There are lots of things where people don't know the full story. But you say, and this is one of the things I've been hearing a lot of people who I think have never seen the show. This is tragic. I've seen every single episode of all of the formats. This is my escapism. No, but the thing is that people will say, like, it's structure and safe. People feel pressured into intimacy. I'm sorry, but numerous couples on these shows are never intimate at all. The men are on the sofa bed for the whole of the honeymoon. There are plenty of couples who reach the end of the show, and you've been very open about the fact they're not being intimate. I would have thought that any of these women, I don't know what happened, and the police, they've not reported to the police, and I doubt very much if there would be a jury that would convict any of these men who, of course, have denied any wrongdoing, because what happens behind closed doors, almost by definition, there's no proof of. But the reality is, these women could have been in a relationship with any of these men in real life and have gone to bed with them, and these things could have happened. And some of the allegations are very worrying. One of the allegations from one of the women that they were having consensual sex without any contraception, and then he was supposed to not ejaculate inside her, and he ejaculated inside her. Bad sexual conduct.
Isn't that a bit of a red flag right there?
Well, yeah. Can I just say, here's my red flag, lady. What are you doing having unprotected sex? If that was my daughter, that's my first question. What were you thinking?
Yeah.
Well, you can't buy condoms? You can't buy condoms because you're on a TV show? Come on, Mark.
That all struck me as being very, very strange. But one of the things I go back to, and I've been looking at this for decades, is the the harms that occur. And in these situations, it's not often the individual, it's the structure into which they're put is the most powerful determinant of behaviour. You will be familiar with the Stanford prison experiment, where they made ordinary folk, some split into being jailers and some into inmates, and they had to stop it because it got dangerous. And the same
but the sadistic cruelty of the guards was horrible.
Yeah, and it's the tension in these shows that causes the same psychological damage. And they have psychiatrists now. They never used to, right back in the day. But what they do is they have the psychiatrists working inside a flawed system. If this was a medical experiment or a psychological experiment with proper controls, you wouldn't allow it to continue. And that, I think, is the real problem.
But certainly in one of these cases where the producers became aware and the experts who get it, the format is this couple, they walk down the aisle, they meet at the aisle, they get married. Some of them don't. I mean, some of them literally walk away at that spot, and they go on a honeymoon together, and then they start married life together, and it all takes place, I think, over about 3 months in real life. But obviously, it's
quite a bizarre proposition, isn't it?
But it's a telly show, and they know the fault. Most of the people who were on the show, people who did the first series wouldn't have known. Anyone doing any series, if you're doing the 10th series of Maths UK, you know what the format is, and you'll have read the interviews, you'll know what's going on. If you haven't done your due diligence, I don't know what your problem is. But here's the thing, you could have an intense experience in any job. We talk soldiers who go away to war, many people who have to go and work away and are in intense situations. They have that. Are we saying that grown adults, given full information, are not allowed to put themselves in any issues at all? Some of the actions of some of the women, and I'm not saying that if what they've alleged happened to them was right, I'm not saying that. They've got every right to speak out, and they've got every right to speak out to the BBC as opposed to a police officer. That's their choice. I understand that. However, at the end of the day, having watched these series, we can guess who some of these women are. A lot of these women have had a lot of very, and the men as well, have had some very questionable relationships. The reason why they're not in a long-term happy relationship. And actually, you could argue these relationships could just as easily have happened outside the experiment, before it and after it. Why are the producers at Channel 4, or the people, the CPL, the company that makes it, why are they responsible for what happens when two adults are in a bedroom or anywhere else behind closed doors? Because I don't want anyone to be responsible for me. Unless I've been locked in, then they are responsible. But if I'm not locked in, then I'm sorry, I don't see why they're responsible.
There's a grain of truth in what you say. Of course there is. But the problem we've got, only a grain. And the reason is, Julia, we've got multiple allegations across different seasons, and that points to a pattern, not an anomaly. And it may not be everybody. It may be just the vulnerable people. But the law says you've got to take people as you find them. And so when harm repeats itself under similar conditions, and I'm not just talking about Marriage at First Sight, but all sorts of reality TV, the responsible question to ask is the system flawed? And how do you mitigate against those protections?
Or are people flawed?
This is not the gold standard, is what I would say.
But I mean, they say they do have as many protections as they can possibly do.
See.
Other than not doing the show at all.
A psychological experiment or a medical trial, then why normalise it for entertainment?
Because people want to watch it and people want to take part. And actually, there are a number of people.
In the process, and they may be consenting to some level of injury.
I would argue that a lot of these people, having watched a lot of these shows, are actually pretty damaged in the first place. In the same way, of the people who go into these shows, their hunger for fame is such. And this is not a show. Some people are in it for fame.
Absolutely right about that. Absolutely right.
But the hunger for fame is nearly always Mark. Let me finish.
And a higher duty on the television company.
The hunger for fame nearly always comes from people being a bit broken inside and being being the trouble. I think a lot of those people in their daily lives, whether it was on television or not, would do the same things and would have the same issues.
I think that what television does is amplify it, because you have the isolation, you don't have your usual support networks, and you have expectations. And I think, you just have to look at Celebrity Big Brother and the number of celebrities who've come out of that feeling quite harmed. Even professionals can't understand in advance how much pressure they're under.
Well, often it's because they're exposed for being the nasty pieces of work they are.
Well, that's probably true too. But the people who are in there are vulnerable, often damaged before they go in. And that, as a matter of law, gives a higher duty of care on the people not to allow a situation, a format, where damage can occur, further damage can occur. And there's no real meaningful follow-up afterwards. If somebody is psychologically damaged in this process, they will kind of get one call afterwards and then they're bunged off.
Well, some of them have actually been offered, therapy, at an institution, a proper in-house unit, a unit where they actually go and live there. I mean, again, here's my thing. I just think that at some point adults have to be responsible for themselves, and if you are not speaking out, and again, I know a lot of women who are victims of sexual assault do not choose to speak out at the time, and I understand that. I'm not victim blaming, but I also think, some of the men involved here, they can, there's certainly one of them, absolutely, I would say was a wrong one, and every single person on screen the first episode went, he's a wrong one. But unfortunately, this was exactly the type of man that this woman was very attracted to. So, maybe some lessons have been learnt for her future. I just think at some point, I just don't think that TV companies have a duty of care to control every single aspect of the contestants' lives. People want to watch these shows. People want to appear on these shows. I don't think it's up to, the great and the good who basically sort of despise people for watching these shows to decide what people can and can't watch.
I think, look, it has the attractions of the Roman arena. Of course it does. But fame, or a desire for fame, isn't a license for harm.
Okay.
The law doesn't recognise you want an exposure.
Here's the thing.
A waiver of basic protections. That's really the
virtually every single top ballerina in the country and in the world is anorexic, because you can't be a ballerina if you have a normal diet. Most of them don't even have periods. They're so physically, skinnily unhealthy.
Yeah.
Let's ban ballet.
Okay.
Let's ban ballet. There's too much harm. It is intrinsic to the performance of ballet at top ballet companies that the women are unhealthily skinny.
Performance of ballet, is it?
Ban ballet.
You can have fat ballerinas,
but they mostly not fat ballerinas. Ballerinas who've had enough food in the last year. They have a period, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, well, and that's
ban ballerinas. No, it's in the system. Ban ballerinas. Ballet's over. Full stop. No, because that won't be banned, because the rich people like ballet and they look down on reality TV that the rest of us enjoy.
We all enjoy reality TV. Just make it safe.
Well, there we are. Mark, pleasure to talk to you. Media lawyer Mark Stevens. 12:49 is the time. Quick response from Tom Slater to that.
Well, I think that's the heart of it, isn't it? Is the fact that you cannot control for what human beings do with the privacy behind closed doors. And, of course, TV as an extra layer of sometimes some quite damaged people looking for fame. Yep. Also, the glare of the screen and all sorts of different factors. But you would end up in a situation where reality TV as a format just could not exist.
No,
and
exactly.
Is that fair to hold those producers accountable?
Absolutely. By the way, 12:50, by the way, is the time. Just to let you know that we've got a question in the House of Commons now about why the government is withholding the latest set of Madison files. All ready to go, all ready to be published. They're going to be held until June. We're only on the 19th of May, for goodness sake. And the Labour government is facing something of a grilling about that. It's a cover-up, let's call it what it is. 12:50 is the time. Up next, going to talk about the latest net zero madness with Harry Wilkinson from the Global Warming Policy Foundation. This is Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. Coming up to 12:53. Thomas Slater's still with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And right now we're joined by Harry Wilkinson. He's head of policy at the Global Warming Policy Foundation and joins us to talk about, well, the latest madness on net zero. Very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Two things I want to talk to you about. One is that extraordinarily, we've got this rather strange situation where Ed Miliband, Mr. Good Person, because he's definitely got a climate hysteric, he has basically failed to actually, live up to this pledge to ban slave labour from the renewable supply chain to meet his net zero goals, because a lot of this stuff comes from China and elsewhere where, let's face it, slave labour is completely the norm. Tell us what's going on.
Well, I mean, it's worth saying just to begin with that, this Chinese slave labour is going into many products. But that being said, Ed Miliband specifically committed, insofar as our energy supply chains were concerned, where wind and solar was concerned, that we were going to have no Chinese slave labour. A very worthy objective, you may say. But they've gone back on that. They've had to introduce a caveat saying, as far as possible. And it just goes to show when you're facing... I mean, this is unbelievable. I mean, this is, modern slavery. It's something that our politicians have talked about a long time, but this is real. And when you look at what's happening in the Xinjiang province, the Uyghur Muslims are having their society and culture erased, and they're being forced into these camps where they produce these goods. This is the most abject, miserable conditions for these workers.
We're not talking about low wages in Bangladesh or something like this, but this extraordinary thing, the same Labour Party that is absolutely obsessed with apparently Gaza being a prison camp, and isn't that terrible? When we're talking about literal prison camps for Muslims, the Uyghur people in China, nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
I mean, I think the challenge they've had is with our complex global supply chains, being able to identify exactly which companies have supplied this. But what's interesting, a report by Sheffield Hallam University identified specific companies where they thought they were supplying UK renewables, but they were involved in these slave labour projects. So if they were able to identify it, surely the Energy Department can identify.
You'd think they'd be able to. But this is the reality, and it will be well hidden. And I imagine if you turn up, everyone will be smiling and nice in the factory, and you go, oh, nothing to see here. But the reality is, we know that there are those slave labour camps in China. I think there's a very strong argument that we shouldn't be getting this stuff. It's supposed to be boosting British energy. Why are we getting our solar panels and our wind turbines from the other side of the world, from a country where it's not just slave labour, as you and I've discussed many times? A lot of these factories are powered by coal, for goodness sake. I mean, it's just absolute craziness. But added to this, I also want to talk to you, I mean, this doesn't surprise us, I mean, the abject hypocrisy on this. I also want to talk to you just very briefly about, now this is something that most people wouldn't know anything about, the RCP 8.5. And this is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. We hear so much about the IPCC, and we're always told about these big warnings and how basically the world's going to die and it's awful, because one of the options in our post-industrial world, because of climate emissions, is that we could reach, we don't know for sure, but one of the computer models, well, a number of them, suggest the worst case scenario is a massive amount of heating of the planet, runaway global warming, and we're all going to die. This is the full hysteria that we've seen on the BBC, Greta Thunberg, David Attenborough, you name it. That's just one of the models, and it's based on this RCP 8.5, isn't it? It's complicated. You explain what that is, but they've quietly dropped it, haven't they?
They have. I mean, you mentioned how significant it was. This is huge. This is a United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and this is a scenario that they create with their assessment reports, how they inform policymakers around the world, all of our governments, how they should be dealing with climate change. Yeah. So this document is really of the highest significance. And what's changed here is not so far the science of climate change has changed, but what's happened is they've acknowledged something that we've known for a very long time, which is that when you put in all these junk numbers, you're going to get a junk result. These scenarios assume that the global population will rise way and above beyond what most experts would think human population
based on the actual child birth rate. Yes,
they say that coal consumption is going to grow, and that's going to be enormous. They say we're not going to have much technological progress, so that the fossil fuels that we do use we're going to use inefficiently in the future. So when you put all these assumptions together, of course you get a really damaging outcome. And so it's very welcome that at last, and Roger Pilkey Jr., who I was grateful to interview last week, has identified this. And it's incredibly important because the UK's own climate planning, the Met Office, who actually produced the UK climate projections, known as UK CP18. These have informed, the Environment Agency, the Energy Agency, flood protection. These have advised all of these important bodies, and they've informed thousands and thousands of scaremongering articles about how bad climate change might be in the future. And now we're told...
No, totally implausible. They've actually used the word, it's implausible. It was always implausible. It was always a higher, but this is the graph that sort of goes like this in terms of heat. I mean, some of the claims were, our winters could be, 5